Okay, I got one fly. I'd like to open this meeting, and I'd like to open it with prayer, if you wouldn't mind. Heavenly Father, we just ask you to be with us. Do those things that would be pleasing to you and would be the right things to do for our city as we talk things over today. We just ask for your guidance and leadership. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Would you join me in the pledge of allegiance to the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, you just want to call the roll? Or?
Sure. Alderman Bean. Alderman Harris.
Here.
Alderman Astor.
Here.
Mayor Outlaw.
Here.
Alderman Kinsey.
Here.
Alderman Best.
Present. Alderman
Odom.
Here. Okay, this time I'm going to turn over to the city manager, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. So this is the called work session that we have to discuss several topics that came out of a request from our retreat. I think initially we were going to try to talk about redevelopment during this work session, but due to some scheduling conflicts, we kind of had to change that around a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and discuss today fire response, which was what we were going to discuss today, as well as redevelopment. But we added the stormwater utility to add to our discussion so that we could focus really on redevelopment at the next work session whenever we do that. Without holding anything up, the first thing that we're going to talk about today is the Fire Rescue Department emergency response. I know Chief and Chrissy and myself have been working on this presentation. So we're going to go through the presentation, and then we'll be happy to stop us at any time if you have questions. But at the end of it, we'll answer any kind of questions you may have regarding emergency response. Essentially, Bobby's done a lot of background research and looking things up, and actually even to the point of yesterday or the day before, running some guys on some routes just to see late at night so that we can see what responses are when there are a limited amount of traffic if we were to look at one of our potential options, which is a preemption device which changes the signal. So I'm going to turn it over at this point. Bobby, you want to present this? I think he's going to go through our presentation, and then, like I said, if we got any questions, feel free to stop us and we'll answer those.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor, board, first of all, I just want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come to you today and present to you guys some identified gaps in service delivery that we have determined and some measures that we have taken to either improve or reduce those gaps. But there's one, typically, if I'm in a new audience, it's kind of my thing since I became chief, is I always ask a question. So, Alderwoman Harris, I think this is the first time I've sat in front of you, and Alderwoman Best, that's the first time I've sat in front of you. So I've got a question before I get started on the presentation. What do you think, in your opinion, is the fire department's #1 responsibility or job? When you think of the fire department, what is the first thing that comes to your mind?
Serving the citizens.
Serving the citizens.
Safety of the situation.
Actually, you two did very well. Typically, when you ask that question, it's fire. Responding to a fire. That's the first thing you think about a fire department, but that's not what our #1 job is. Our #1 job is fire prevention, preventing it from occurring in the first place. If we never have another fire, we have another incident, we've done our job, we've performed our job, and that's the way I look at things. And typically when we hire somebody on the department, that's one of the first things I ask them, why are you here? And if they start talking about the adrenaline side of it, the excited side part of putting the fires out, I stop them and I say, oh, that's not what our #1 job is. Our #1 job is preventing it from occurring in the first place. And we do that through several things. Through our business inspections, we do it through home safety visits where we go to your home, smoke detectors and things such as that. So our #1 job is preventive, but you guys did a great job of answering that question. So we are there to serve the community, and that's the best way we can do it, so hopefully to prevent it from occurring in the first place.
I watched Chicago Fire, so
Okay.
I was practicing for today.
That being said, I think we'll get started with the slides. What you see in front of you there is basically our first due areas. And what I want to draw your attention to on these maps is the pink is headquarters, green is Elizabeth Avenue, and then you look at Thurman Road Fire Station, and the blue on the other map. Look at the size of the areas comparatively is what I really want you to pay attention to. As you see, headquarters is quite a bit smaller than the other two areas.
You want to talk about the red line?
Yeah, the red lines you see on the outer side, that's actually the city limit, so there's either potential growth of going further. And one of the things we have to look at is the 5 mile rule, which is anything outside of the 5 miles, that's when insurance gets involved. We reached out to some other cities of similar size and population. As you can quickly see, our square miles, we're above average. Our employees were below average. Number of stations were below average. Square miles is really the one that stuck out to me the most. Is we're 10 square miles per station, where the next one closest to us is 6.5. And our population, I mean, our budget for 1,000 population, a little bit below average, so we're kind of in the norm with that one. And then the number of employees per 1,000 population is 2.2.
Bob, let me ask you on that, 137 on Hickory, did you guys qualify that enough to know if the 137 members, is that totally 100% fire employees, or do they have other duties, or is there some anomalies?
I mean, they're EMS, I mean, there's some anomalies there. So,
yeah, okay.
Yes, but
so that one, maybe you want to throw it out and...
well, I mean, if you go to Statesville's a good one to look at.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if you think about it, I mean, we're very similar to Statesville in population and square miles, and you see we're still under unemployed, we're still a number of fire stations,
right,
and so on and so
okay.
forth. So.
Let me ask you, go back to the Hickory, because I didn't quite understand. That 137 employees, that's fire and EMS only though, right?
Correct. That's correct, fire and EMS.
And you're running EMS as well now a lot, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, my question is similar to theirs. Now, we just had the chief to say that he finally has a full staff. What is your turnover rate at the fire department?
We have a very low turnover
We don't have
rate.
any turnover.
That's what I thought.
Typically, in the past 5 years to 10 years, it's either been through retirement or medical disability.
Very good.
You don't want them for that's because he had a side business and he wanted to do it full time.
Chief, on the square miles, does that include the city limits that's in Bridgeton area?
Yes.
So the number of fire stations, since that area is contracted out, could that, we're not really factoring in, we're taking into account the size and population, but we're not accounting that we have coverage that's contracted out, correct?
Yeah, but I mean, I can find out what that is, but I mean, it's going to be minimal. I mean, I would think 2 square miles, if that.
It might reduce it some, but then the other thing, if we're going to do that, then we need to be in fairness of the study, is to go to all those places that we're qualifying as well to see how many they have contractually and take them out of the mix too. This is kind of standard data that you get, the square miles and stuff is what you get, as far as their coverage area based on the city limits.
Chief, question is, when they run down Highway 55, how far do we go down Highway 55? All the way up to Martin Marietta?
Yes, sir. Martin Marietta is the edge of it on that on 55.
That's the edge of that there.
That's correct. That's
Now,
right.
what's the
right at
mileage
5
on that?
miles. It's right at 5 miles from Elizabeth Avenue Fire Station to the entrance to Martin Marietta.
So you kind of see, I'll point it out here for you, Mr. Kinsey.
Okay.
This large piece of property right here, that's the quarry. Right in here, this is like this right here.
Right.
That's the quarry site. And this red line represents the 5 mile mark
Got you.
that Bobby's talking about.
Okay, now, and from Colonia, is it Colonia Trailer Park on 43? What's that one there? That one's shorter, right? That's about
And it's like around 4 miles up to Taylor. I can't remember it's off the little subdevelopment on the right-hand
Yeah.
side. It's right at 4 miles.
So I bet you all went to East Grove.
We do.
Okay.
I mean Beach Grove, yeah.
Okay.
I got them mixed up there.
So they're all about there the same, but it's 4 point something miles.
Okay.
I reckon the interesting thing about this, our benchmark cities on this little graph here is the number of square miles per station. That's where it really shows the big difference. I mean, we're running 10 square miles per station, and what's the average? The average looks like it may be 4 or so. Does it show?
5.
5,
Right
okay.
middle.
Yeah, there we go. The average is 5, so we're double the amount of area we're covering than most of our benchmark cities.
What I don't get from that though is when you closed Fort Totten and National Avenue, the city had what, 4 or 5 at the time. So do those other cities have fire stations the size of Lisp Avenue, Thurman Road, and Main Street, or do they have smaller, let's take, for instance, number 7, Hickory, about the same number of square feet. Are all things current as far as the size of those 7 stations? Are they smaller stations? Are they mega stations? Or I know that's
small.
huh?
They're all 2 bay though, right?
Yeah, most of them are small. I can tell you like
So
I'm real familiar with Hickory and Statesville, but like the ones in Statesville, when they added their 4th station, it was very, very similar in nature if you want to relate it to kind of like a Pleasant Hill area where they had expanded their city limits out this way due to some growth and annexation requests and stuff like that. And they needed a 4th fire station, and they put it out there, and it was a 2-door, 2-bayer kind of deal, and it had, but it was no means like a big, massive campus or anything.
Which is about the same size, if I'm not mistaken. If you were to build a substation, Bob, you'd be looking at it as a 2-bay, correct? 2-bay drive-through.
Yes.
Pretty standard, just about like Thurman Road, Elizabeth Avenue.
Question.
Yes,
The old, I think you and I talked about that, Mark, about 4 years ago. The one out there where Eddie's at, that building there. We talked about it and we never brought it back up again. And using that as a satellite, but I don't know if it's just that's died out.
No, we got back with you on it. It's just the problem is the building is privately owned. That's Eddie's building technically.
Okay.
And you essentially have room for all it is a 2-bay garage is all it is.
Okay.
And you got room for a desk back there, and I think they don't have any sleeping quarters, nothing. So it's essentially a place where they store a fire apparatus, and that's it.
Is it even rated, Bob?
it's rated, but I don't know how the last rating did, because there's a lot of changes in the rating system, but it is a rated station.
The one in Industrial Park, did they ever rate that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, this was interesting to me. What I did was I did residential growth since 2012, and it revealed that 60% of new residential property is actually located in the Thurman Road fire station area, and Elizabeth Avenue had 27%, and headquarters had another 7% growth. Commercial growth revealed that 61% of new commercial property is located in Elizabeth Avenue fire station, while headquarters had 27%, and Thurman had another 12% growth. And well, go back down for just a second. And both these slides, if you kind of, some of the things that we've done is kind of strategic plan. If you go into our strategic initiative number 1, you'll kind of find a lot of, if you see it up in the right-hand corner, it kind of ties in back into my strategic plan. So if you see you're talking about a particular topic, you can go to that part of the plan and see where it was derived from. For the board's 2018 retreat, your goal was to improve emergency response time to meet acceptable service delivery benchmarks. Well, back in 2016, we began what we call a peer review session, which led us into a strategic plan, which we brought to the board at that time and approved. And the intention of the strategic plan was to strengthen, improve, and advance our department. And some of the initiatives that came out of that were the standard coverage, emergency communications, core services, EMS, staffing and structure, and evaluation of all services. So again, using the strategic initiatives in the strategic plan, one of the things it tells us that we were looking to do was establish benchmarks and baseline. Well, the NFPA already has benchmarks, recommended benchmarks in place, and for call handling time, it tells us, and this recently changed, 80% of all emergency calls should be processed within 60 seconds. So by the time they pick up until they get us out, it should be 60 seconds. And 95% of that time, we should be doing it in 106 seconds. Turnout is 80 seconds for fire and 60 seconds for EMS. Travel time for residential structure fires is 4 minutes for the first due with 4 people on the apparatus, 4 firefighters, 8 minutes for all necessary firefighters to be on the scene. Another new thing to the NFPA 1710 is now they used to not tell you exactly how many people that they recommend. Now they actually go to the point where they say residential fires, that's to say 15 firefighters on initial alarm, while strip malls, garden style apartments need to have a 27, 29 firefighters on initial alarm.
And this standard comes from NFPA,
That's correct. NFPA
which is
1710.
the, why don't you explain what NFPA is to the new board members especially?
Basically, it's a board that consists of business leaders, firefighters, legal people, and some politicians that come together and write these things according, and you'll see a little bit later in the slides how this ties in. It's not like they just come up with these numbers out of the hat. There's reason and rhyme and reason, as they'll say, and go for some of these numbers. And what was happening, they did NIST, which is National Institute for Training, for investigating and doing data. And up in Fairfax County, they did some research determining how many people it took to actually attack a fire and take care of it. So this is where those numbers came from. For residential fires, 15, the number they came up with in strip malls, 27, 29. So let's talk about the total response time continuum. Again, call handling like we just discussed before, notification to driving out of station, which we call turnout time, and then there's the travel time. Travel time is from the time the wheels leave the station until they stop on the scene. So when you look at it, the fire growth curve, this is what this is. Basically what that does, it allows you to have a graph to look at the percentage of destruction of the property and possible occurring of loss of life. So basically the interest is motivated by the fact typically flashover is considered as the point of transition from a small fire involving a small number of objects to the room to a large fire involving all objects in the room. Once the fully developed room fire exists, life safety for occupants within that room is no longer a concern because the room is obviously untenable after flashover. So basically if you take that curve, you just look at it, as the fire grows, you look over to the left, that kind of tells you the percentage of destruction you will have according to what minute. Flashover is what we just talked about. That's when survivability is at zero or close to zero. And not only for the citizens that may be inside the structure, but also have to be concerned with my firefighters. So basically it becomes a defensive type attack.
So on that graph, from the incipient stage of the fire to the flashover, in a typical residential properties is 10 minutes
That's correct.
and beyond, at 10 minutes, there's really no chance for
Survivability.
Chief, do you keep records on the fires that we've had that the department's responded to and where they fall on that chart?
And you'll see, I think in a minute, where we fall. This is fairly new to us. It's part of the strategic plan. We really never tracked it, so I don't have a lot of data to be able to show you today. But we are tracking it, and we're working on things, and you'll see further in slides on some things.
But you do have run times, right?
Yeah, but
And run times would do the same thing, wouldn't it?
yeah, but I'm talking about breaking it down to the call handling time, to us getting out of the station, to the actual travel time, because all those are different factors. In the past, we always looked at response time. We didn't ever think about breaking it down on different parts that we can improve and make better to make that total response time less. In the past, it's just not been tracking. We just recently, through some software changes and some other things, so now we can track it, so I can break it down to all sections of that, see what we've improved and what we haven't improved. So some things are out of our control. There's some things we can control, but there's some things we can't, and that's why we're here today, and it kind of shows you some of the things that we can't control, that we need some guidance from you. So that brings us to this slide. In order to determine an acceptable response time, when I say we, I'm talking about the leadership of this city. When I use that word we, I'm not talking about the fire department, I'm talking about we as leaders of this city need to first determine the fire department's outcome-based performance goal for moderate risk residential fire. So basically, we need to start with that and kind of work backward. We need to determine what we want our outcome to be. Do we want it to be confined to the room of origin for less than 8 minutes? Or do we want to say beyond room of origin, more than 8 minutes? We need to decide that first, and that will determine what is an acceptable response time. Follow? Okay.
You talk about some of the implications of a beyond room of origin fire.
Well, beyond room of origin, basically that's, go back to the graph that we had before. Now you're start talking about you're going from probably a 20% destruction of a property to upwards to 60 to 70% destruction of property. And there again, survivability goes from high to low. And that's what this is all about. And we need to determine that first before I can tell you, what's acceptable.
And you've also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just saying, we talked as well, you've also got the kind of unmeasurable qualification of a person, the belongings within the house. If it's one room, you can probably salvage the rest of everything in the house, but if the fire starts spreading beyond that, our citizens could potentially lose everything that they own. That is a consideration as well. It's more of a sentimental one. You could say, stuff can be replaced, but some things in some people's minds are not replaceable. So that's just another consideration as well if that fire spreads.
Chief, the less than 8 minutes, more than 8 minutes, is that the time of suppression, or is that arrival time?
That's arrival time.
Is that first due?
That would be full.
So
complement.
second due has to be
Full
there.
complement.
Okay.
What about that that fire that we had over there in Derby Park, the one that was in between the two houses there?
But everything has variables. What we have to build this thing is what we consider to be the norm fire. That one had other variables. You had wind blowing 25 to 30 mile an hour. You had some other things on there. And if you'll notice that the arriving company that day, they chose to go defensive because they needed to know to do something. They saw this fire growing tremendously. So they chose to save the structures on either side. And then when the troops arrived, then they did an initial attack on that fire. So it's all decision. There are a lot of avenues. So what we try to do is pick the normal fire growth. If you don't take the wind out of it, take the any other things out of it. If we went in there and had a fire, and there's tons of videos too that show you the different situations that you can put this in and how the growth changes. But what we did, what the NFPA does is take a normal growth fire with today's furnishings.
I just wanted you to respond to that a little bit because that was one of those, I guess, response times and assessing what had to actually be done to say that those two structures that were so very close to one another.
So I think they were like 10 feet apart.
Absolutely.
So.
Chief, are you seeing any cities that, we talked during your peer thing with the other chiefs about some cities were charging for services like with cars and things, they're billing insurance companies and things like that. Have you looked at, or are any cities that are doing that? Because I think there was some legality question as if they could, and some are charging like when they put fires out with cars, or some cities are looking at trying to charge if nuisance factors of not having proper prevention, things like that. Is anything up to date on that?
The only one that I'm aware of, and there's other states
Right.
that have gone past that, but the only one that I know of that's doing anything like that is Washington, and that's for vehicle crashes.
Right.
But it has created an uproar.
Right.
Because how do you separate the person that's riding through the county that doesn't live there? Then they can say, hey, yeah, we should be charging. But you got John Q. Public that's already paying taxes and having to pay that fee too. So it has caused a little bit of uproar. But Washington has implemented on vehicle crashes that they will start charging.
Okay, and that's the only one you know of doing it.
Yes, sir. Basically, again, now I've identified the benchmark. This is kind of where we are with our baseline. If you were to take our baseline, our call handling is somewhere around 60 seconds. For headquarters, our turnout time for first due is 4:52 and 5:40 for second due. Thurman, 5:10, 12:15 for second due. And you can see across, and basically if you look at the totals, again, go back to the fire curve we were discussing earlier, you got a 5:52, 6:40, 6:10, 13:15, 8, and 11:08. So what we did with that now, I've taken this, we have taken
Could
this.
you go back to the slide, Chief Boyd, I just have a question.
Sure.
So when you say the turnout travel time, 7 minutes, is that to the farthest reach of what Elizabeth Avenue covers?
No, this is, we're taking our 90 percentile of our response times.
These are actual numbers,
These are
90
actual numbers.
percentile of our actual.
That's not, you haven't time, like if you had to get, I don't know what, and unfortunately, I don't know what each one covers. I don't know how.
But
what-
you go back to the map.
That was the beginning.
Yeah,
Okay, I missed
it'd be
it.
responding in those areas. The
Okay.
green would be, of course, be Elizabeth, Alderman Bingle. The pink's gonna be headquarters, and the blue over there is Thurman.
Okay, no problem, thank you,
Yeah.
sorry.
And then that NFPA standards
Right, I
is
saw
what he's
that.
at, is the 80th, 90th percentiles is where he's trying to get at, so.
Okay.
Now, let me, again, for some of the ones that are new to this, what's the, I reckon, and I'm gonna let you explain it, but I'm gonna get it started. The difference between first due and second due, and the consequences of second due not arriving, which is that involves a 2 in, 2 out. Would you just explain that a little bit, or is that coming up, or?
No, I'll be glad to explain it to my best ability, but basically, you have two different things they're asking for. First due, they want you to be there within, if you'll go back to the NFPA. Basically, they want us to have the first due truck there within 4 minutes, and that's travel time, okay? With 4 firefighters. That's to get things going. That's to get things going. While the rest of them are there within 8 minutes, and the reason for that is you got your 2 in, 2 out, which 2 in, 2 out, I'll be honest with you, can get gray, and there's a lot of different interpretations of it, but the way operations happen on a fire ground, you have so many different tasks that we have to perform before you can even enter. It hampers on that. So now you're taking what would 15 people would be divvying up and taking care of. You're putting all that responsibility on 4. So they don't want you to put 4 people. 2 in, 2 out. Say you have to have 2 in and 2 out. There is some. I'll be honest with you. There is some different opinions on it. Some different interpretations whether or not you can use an engineer and a captain as a part of that 2 out. But then what I'm taking away from, in my opinion, is I'm taking away my safety person. I'm taking away from my command that's looking at strategic things of it. And I'm taking away possible my operator of the apparatus. So I'm asking people to go inside with an engine pumping to try to go inside and fight fire. Well, nobody, they could be possibly taken off that apparatus. So that's, there is a lot of different interpretations of it. That's just Bobby's feelings on it. But they want us to be there because we have RIT to put in place. RIT is a rescue intervention team. Basically, that's to protect our firefighters. We put that in place so if our firefighters go down, we have a team to be able to go in and get them out. If you remember or recall, it's been quite a few years ago, this all started with Phoenix Fire Department. They lost like 8 firefighters, and they couldn't get to them. And that's before they had those type teams in place. So since then, NFPA has put in RIT teams. We have specialized training, specialized equipment. We carry an extra bottle with us, so if they run out of air, we can hook them back up with air. So that team is specifically to do that. So now if you start trying to put all that responsibility on 4 people, to get this tightened out, they do allow us to go in for a rescue. If we got a known rescue, we can go inside and rescue that person. But it has to be a known rescue. Yes, ma'am.
And you said that these are actual numbers that you guys are dealing with. So you're saying headquarters, the standard is 4. You're already 52 seconds behind.
That's a little bit misleading, Alderwoman Harris, but that includes our turnout time too. That row there, because it's a new tracking for us. Again, it's hard for me to separate and give you good data, so I just decided just to put it on there. So basically, that 452 includes our time getting out of station.
Which is another 80 seconds that's given.
That's correct.
So minus 60 seconds. So he's basically, out of headquarters, he's basically meeting the 4-minute response time.
But not at Thurman or Elizabeth.
And Elizabeth especially. You know, you were talking about the two in, the 4 firefighters originally right on the scene. And I hope you and I agree with this anyway. Just to give you an idea of what these 4 firefighters are doing, when an engine company arrives and there's 4 people on that truck, one man gets off that truck at the fire hydrant, and he's pulling hose and getting ready to hook the hose up to the water source. The other man's got to pump that engine, and the other 2 guys are pulling fire hoses off and advancing them to the door. The problem is that utilizing, and we saw this, utilizing the hydrant guy, by the time he gets through hooking up his hoses, turning on the water at the hydrant, and then running back to the fire scene with a full turnout gear on and air pipe on, he can't go in the house because he's spent. And utilizing the pump operator hampers the second due people coming in because they're going to be pulling more hoses off, but now there's nobody to operate and charge those hoses. So it's, you have a dedicated pump operator, whether you let the hydrant guy go in or be ready to go in as part of the RIP team or not, is depends on what kind of condition he's in when he gets there, I reckon. But you really cannot do anything internally of a fire until that second fire truck arrives and you have more than 4 people on the scene.
Chief, two
And that's
questions
OSHA.
on that. The second due, is that second company, internal?
Yes.
Okay. And then the turnout for Thurman and Elizabeth, why are they so much longer than headquarters?
Well, Thurman,
Average travel time is longer.
that's the travel time. It's told us that the turnout time is going to be the same across the board.
Okay.
The differences is going to be in the travel time.
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
And because it goes back to that map that I showed you of response areas. I mean, a lot of folks don't realize, you leave Thurman Road Fire Station, you go all the way back into Bern. It's right a good way back in there. And the actual fire that we had out there was probably close to 4 miles.
Just to kind of help out here, and I asked Bobby this question because of this graph here is a little bit tricky to read because it has the turnout and travel together. The reason being is because up until just recently, I guess, they never tracked what the turnout time was out of the station. So now Bobby's even got a timer up, which we'll talk about things that he's done since becoming chief of basically a countdown on the wall that tells his staff where they are as far as their turnout. So now we're tracking a little bit of all of these things with call handling, the turnout, and the travel all separately. But as of right now, with all your historical records that right now have turnout and travel combined. Right.
One of the biggest things, and Mayor, you remember this, I'm sure recall this, and Alderman Odom, you recall this, one of the biggest things that we received out of that peer review thing was breaking things down and putting it into segments, and that was a big eye-opening for me. But the problem is, like the manager's saying, we don't really have good data, and we're just now getting implemented in places to be able to track it. So now it's for me to be able to say, guys, you're not getting out of the house. It's taking you 110 seconds to get out of the house. We got to do something. Before it was, all I saw was a time sitting there.
I know we were trying to figure out how to get about 15 seconds off the 911 time because, I think that study kind of said that 911 was more geared up toward police calls coming in than fire calls. And
I don't mean to interrupt you, Mayor, but we're getting ready to go into some depth here. I think you'll see some things that we have implemented to exactly what you were just saying.
Let me ask you a question before you go further. It might help the board and it will help me. For what little I know about firefighting is Department of Insurance, ISO ratings, and National Fire, the association, which is kind of not, I don't know if it's a trade association, but I assume it's more recommendations, whereas ISO is actual ratings, even though it's a private company. But between all of them, when we're trying to understand this, and we're talking about all these things, are ISO ratings somewhat in sync with the National Association of Fire?
It is now.
Yeah.
Just recently, the ISO and accreditation, ISO now mirrors accreditation.
Well, good, because see, I hate for you to, do 10 pages of what you just did, and then the next 10 pages are totally a different set of
What the
recommendations.
model we
by
were
ISO.
following would be the model of accreditation. Okay?
And God bless that they've done it like that, because sometimes they conflict.
Well, that's what
You know,
I'm
the
thinking.
NFPA is the legal document that I reckon is a legal document that and standard that someone's going to, an attorney's going to use.
Mhm.
That's what NFPA is. Yeah.
And I tell you my thoughts, Mayor, okay? I feel like with this strategic plan was the best thing we've ever done. I mean, 'cause now we know where we're going. We know how to do it. We know what parts are important. And accreditation, I'll be honest with you, is a goal of mine. But I would rather take it off in bits and pieces. And there are so many components of the accreditation that we can do without even saying accredited. But the ISO rating will follow us. By doing it, by going down this way, you'll see the ISO rating following us. By us following some of these things we're trying to do with the strategic plan, take ISO and set it over here. It will follow us. Because if you recall, if you remember Chief Kane from Cary, he had no idea he was going to be a 1. Now he's a 1. And how he did
Yeah, I
that,
remember you
how he did that was starting to make some moves that you're seeing that we're making in the strategic plan. And the ISO rating followed him.
And I think he told us that the last thing we should walk away from that meeting is worried about getting our ISO from a 3 to a 2, that if you would not worry about the rating and worry about what you just said, that
The rating
the
will
rating
follow
might
us.
would follow with it. I do want to ask you one other thing, and this can help you guys, because you kind of know where I stand on some of these issues. I assume that your statistics, we get a free pass that Bridgeton is not included in the response time. I think it's 4 minutes for headquarters, the average.
I think
And-
there's just not enough calls there. There's just,
Well,
there's
what
just
I'm
not
saying
enough
though
data.
is that I'm trying to use Bridgeton as an example. The really only difference between Bridgeton and the far reaches of Caroline Colors or the far reaches of Pleasant Hill is a river. And if all things were equal and there weren't a river, we probably would be servicing Bridgeton ourselves. Now, having said that, the two things concern me, we need to be concerned about, I hear this quite a bit, is the railroad being shut down for 45 minutes. And right now, the missing link in firefighting in New Bern to me is a fast response F-350, Chevy 3500, Dodge Ram truck that can go 3 times faster than a fire truck. That when that railroad is stopped and that downtown is a donut hole of being able to respond, that systematically different times of the day, based on statistical problematic areas where fires might happen, that a rapid response, and particularly with that railroad shutdown, that thing is sitting in downtown New Bern or in Riverside waiting for a fire. And when that happens, is right now, are we sending a Quint over or a fire truck over across the Twin Bridge, and is it stationed in that area while that event is happening, that 45-minute
If
train?
it's there for any length of time, we move them downtown. But we have done enough research on that to determine if we take this route, it's going to take us this amount of time to get there. If the train is located here, we'll go to this route. So we have built that as part of our response plan to drill it. That's why the cameras, and we've actually even now, used to, the only place you could see the cameras was the communication. But one of the things that we've implemented, and I now have them at the fire station, so guys can quickly go to the computer, see all the things. So if somebody misses it, and then they can, right then, they know to change the route. And we have got that as part of our response plan.
Good.
To take care of it. And my concern with the F-350, there are flying squads out there. There are places to go, but you garnish 0 points. They will not count towards your first due or your second due. It would be above. It would be saying that we had this thing as above as an extra entity sitting here. We would not garnish any points for that.
So again, if you leave if a train is shut down and I hope you guys have good enough contact with the railroad that they would say this is not gonna be a 5-minute shutdown, this is gonna be one of the long ones, that we would have a truck over across the Twin Bridge to go over there and be kind of making some circles.
We actually had the incident just about a week ago. And the guys did a fantastic job. Nobody noticed it. All of a sudden, when the guy was walking by the screen, said that train was like it stopped. Made a couple phone calls, so we got on the phone right then to New Bern Communications, said, call Norfolk, find out what's going on, find out what kind of issue we have. The guys did a great job. They took the apparatus just to be safe. They just said it's time to go do some hydrant checks anyway. So they said, let's go do some hydrant maintenance. And they went over downtown area and started doing some hydrant maintenance until the train started moving. So yeah, the guys are on top of that.
Okay.
We have response plans. We have, because that was one of the things, if you recall, back when Alderman Astor was chief, that when we were closing the headquarters station and closing the National Avenue station, that was the biggest thing. And so we have spent a lot of time putting together some really good initiatives on taking care of that.
And then on the other side of that coin is, and I even hate to mention it because God forbid it'll happen tonight. I was in the fire department over 30 years, and I can only remember maybe 2 or 3 times in the 30-year period of time that the train had us blocked. How many can you recall?
Once, and because it happened to me one time in my 28 years.
During a response.
28 years.
I mean, we kind of treat a train blocking the railroad tracks as if you approach it and he's there, almost like this truck having a flat tire. This is one of them things you just can't predict. In this case, we can sometimes predict it, and then you just go to plan B. That's the reason why a second due is so important a lot of times too, or another reason why a second due is important.
All right, back to this. This just kind of just shows you where we are. Okay, if you take these different stations where we fall into that, and I want to go back to the slide we discussed on what our outcome needs to be. Yeah, that one. I'm sorry. This just kind of ties back into what we need. We need as leaders to decide what our outcome is. So that's what's going to determine. Because if you, us, whoever, the leadership of the city determines that extending beyond the room of origin is acceptable benchmark, then we've got acceptable response times.
I guess what I'm struggling with is if we don't have the data to show how many calls we've had that we called before the room of origin versus after, how can we make an educated decision that we want to keep it, we want to spend, let's just say that $1 million, okay? We want $1 million is the cost to go from this level to that level. If we don't know how many we have that are at risk.
Well, that's 90% there. What you're seeing there is the 90% of the time, this is what our times are. Now, that 90% of the time might only be 15 calls. I don't know. So basically 90% of the time, the full response for Thurman is going to be somewhere around 12 minutes, 90% of the time.
So 90% of the responses that we've made from Thurman Road, the fire has extended beyond the room of origin?
90% of our times. I told you there's a lot of factors. This is a scientific graph that shows you. This is where NFPA determined that 4 minutes and 8 minutes. That's why you see the line. Where's it broken at? It's right there broken at the 8-minute mark. That's where those times come from, because that's typically when it's going from one to the other. There are a lot of factors, but all you can do is take the science part of it, which is what that is. Take what we do 90% of the time, and sometimes we may be, and you got to remember, this is just for structure fires. This is not vehicle crashes.
Right.
This is just 90% of the time. And the data we have, like right now we're at 260 calls. I looked at it the other day, 260 calls we had thus far. 50 of them were fire alarm activations, which we have to treat until we arrive on scene as a structure fire. So 50 of those calls so far have been true with tie into this.
And how many of those 50 were actual fires? Do we know that? Sure we do.
I wrote it down, but I don't have it. I can get that to you. But I looked through them the other day, each one of the CAD sheets. But one of the things I was trying to determine is the call handling time. I was looking at just out of those 50 times. I was trying to, in case that question was asked.
I have a quick question,
Yes, ma'am.
because I'm new to the board. For the Thurman, Road location, and I'm asking just for my own thoughts, when the board or whoever decided to implement that we needed that, did they have a map and put down a circle and say, this is a great spot so that you're in those times? Because it seems like the location of where Thurman Road is always going to set you in this area 90% of the time. So we might need to be looking at
The problem with
putting a
Thurman
map
Road-
down and saying, if I'm over here in this location, I can reach these points at 4 or 5 or 6. It seems like it might not be a good location.
Yeah, you-
Thurman Road, when it was built, there was one development out there that had requested to come into the city, and that was to Bern.
With no plans for anything else.
And they said, this is a piece of property that we're going to provide you to build a fire station. There was no thought of it growing past that. But what's happened occurred since then. Because you've got Croatan and a creek on this side. You've got a strip of land on this side. So what's happened is that has done like this. So eventually, it's probably not going to be in my tenure. And if you get reelected, it may be in your tenure, I don't know. Eventually, that's going to be another discussion. Right now, it's not, because I think, and you'll see here a little bit, that I've got a temporary solution for taking care of this. But down the road, yeah, it's going to be, and it may be decided, we got to close this station, build one here, build one here.
Right, and see, when I'm thinking about these discussions and making these decisions, I don't want to have to keep coming back to the
I agree
same
with you
thing. So we
100%.
can get it all done in one with the amount of money that we need to do it. I mean that's more realistic to me than being here 4 or 5 years from now saying, hey, all right, we can again, we gotta get another fire station when you may be able to do like you just said, close one down and build 2 more that will benefit the areas.
And you're exactly right. And that's the reason why that anytime a new development comes into the city, they have the departmental reviews so they can look at it, and the chief of the fire department and chief of police can say, you know, guys, if we annex this area inside the city and they build this thing here, you're really going to put a strain on our little fire department that's sitting over here, because it's going to be 5 miles or 6 miles or something like that. Well, you know, sometimes that happens, but it's nothing unusual. It is for New Bern, but it's nothing unusual for cities to close firehouses and sell the property and relocate them. Rocky Mount used to build a fire station that looked like a house, so they could sell the property as a residential property when they relocated.
Quick question, on your Thurman Road, second due, 12 on Elizabeth Avenue, is that, I mean, I wish you could alter the sign. I assume you're not including 31 and 21 on those mutual aid factors of second due.
We'll get to a slide a little bit where I talk about what assistance we're receiving.
So what I'm trying to say is that while I assume the second due is really good for headquarters, the 5 minutes and 40 seconds, that's because it's getting aid from Elizabeth Avenue, probably. I don't know that. But if you were to factor in realistically the mutual aid second due, if you could, 31 and 21, West New Bern and Old Cherryford Road, would not that 12 minutes and 15 seconds and that 10 minutes and 8 seconds with mutual aid fall back down into a relative norm of?
No, sir.
No, sir. What would mutual aid second
You
due be?
gotta remember, unless that station just happens to have 4 people there for a meeting, for example. If they're there for that, yeah, you're 100% correct. But 99% of the time, that's not a fact.
So
Basically, what you have to do is, now if they were to have their stations manned 24/7, you're 100% correct. So what they have to do is, because the industry is pushing away from POVs as hard as they can, because there's so many, the highway patrol has got so many crashes that are occurring. On the safety side of things, they're pushing away from the POVs. Not saying they still don't do it. They're pushing for people to go to the station, man their apparatus, and then drive their apparatus to the station. So now you've got an individual, the pager goes off, if I got time, or if I got to go to work in 2 hours, they're doing that number. And then they're deciding whether or not they can make the call. Then once they decide they gotta make the call, then they gotta drive to the fire station, get in the fire truck, and then the times are gonna be probably close to us. But and you'll see a little bit further where I've done some research on that too, to kind of answer the question.
And when you're speaking.
And trust me, I was a volunteer before I became a paid guy. Alderman Ashford was. Most of the guys in 21 and 31 work for us and volunteer over there. So they're great folks, and they're great assets. But there's a time and place. On a moderate risk structure fire, initial response is not the time. Now, if it's a 90-degree day and you're going to wear your folks out, by all means, have them come. Or if it's a warehouse fire, where you need at least 60 folks or whatever, because you're running guys through there every 20 minutes, and after 2 times, we pull them out and throw them in rehab.
So
I don't even allow them to go back in there after they've been 2 times.
the bottom line is, statistics show that the second due times are not lowered if that second due response is a volunteer station. That's kind of the bottom line.
What I don't get about that is Bridgeton with tri-community. That's totally volunteer, and the city of New Bern is fighting fires through a contract with volunteers in Bridgeton. So I'm just kind of struggling trying to understand. You just told me all that. I understand. I appreciate it. And the POV situation is the same over there. You got guys, we're riding down the road 35 miles an hour, and the guys coming up in a big black truck with the private guy that's going to fight fire. That's happening in Bridgeton. We're paying people to fight fires for us over that way. So I'm still having a bit of a divide trying to figure out how.
I think, Mayor, if you look at it like this, we really have a couple of homes and a strip mall. That's it. So the amount of call volume there is, I mean, it's if you look at the graph of probability versus risk, you know, to me, that is an area of town that eventually somebody's going to have to make a decision. Eventually, as that area grows out, or the call volume increases to a point that all of a sudden we're into the same jam we're here with some of these other places, you may have to reconsider and say, either we're going to get out of the city over there, or we're going to have to go to a fire station.
You know, that area over there, as you know, the plans were that it was going to be huge.
Yeah.
And eventually, I mean, we talked about that we would have to put a house over there. In fact, talking to Mayor Williams over there at the time was maybe we would take over their house. You know, now they're out of the fire department business altogether over there now, and tri-communities contracts with them. You know, since that developments and other developments have taken place, and you know, it would almost be best interest of public safety probably to unannex them. You know, maybe, I don't know if you could even do that or not, but it would, you know, it's that place over there. And I remember now, was it Dr. Ashford's house? I mean, we had a major fire over there, right on the water. I mean, a nice one in Dr. Ashford's house. You know, a beautiful home right on the water. And you know, it's just a long ways over there. But
Chief, I have one question though. Do you go by the number of structures? So, you know, how many houses within a certain mile radius? Because I'm just, you know, with Thurman Road, you know, to Bern is pretty much all built out. You got Carolina Colors now on the run more. You got Selhorn Heights. You've got Bryce's Crossing out there. You've got to cover. Now, Hardy Farms, is that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hardy
all
Farm.
of that. I mean, at some
Long
point you
time.
say this station can cover 500 residents, or is there a certain number that we have to stay with? It's miles. It's not the number of structures.
I think that triggers the answer to the mayor's question. Is when do you go from being acceptable to contracting it out to being, we've got to cover it ourselves. We've got to do here. And I feel like, I mean, I'll be able to answer any questions you guys have, but I feel like some of the slides we got coming forward, if we can move on, I think you'll see some of the answers that
Hold
you're
the
asking.
questions to the end, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, some of the things we've done to try to improve. First thing we did was we implemented a communications committee to improve communication time for all stakeholders. And I forgot and left one person off there. Chrissy actually has been a part of this committee too. This has been a really exciting thing we did. Finally, we had come together. We have Jane, we have PD, we have telecommunicators there. We all sit around a table and talk about our calls and things that we can do to improve our call handling time. Another thing that we have looked at doing is implementing the EFD prior to dispatch by June. And this will help bring consistency and simplicity, and should save seconds on call handling. One of the things that I'm finding doing my research in the call handling is the telecommunicators are having a hard time sometimes finding the run cards. We call for service time. This will simplify all that, and we'll make it so that basically, just like the EMD that we have implemented, they'll be asking questions. It will take them to the next thing. So basically, if somebody calls in and says, my electrical outlet is on fire, it will determine what we send to that. So it'll be an easy step process to, like, again, bring consistency and simplicity. We're closely monitoring the signs and monitoring times and giving feedback to supervisors. And this next one it's been a good thing too. We've implemented a ride-along program. Basically allows the telecommunicators to come ride with us so they can see firsthand when we're talking about something, whether it's we're on scene, 3-story structure, moderate fire, whatever. They understand now what we're talking about. And on the other side of the phone, we've actually had some of our folks to sit there and watch some of the stress that they're under and the things that they do. So we don't, because sometimes you get frustrated. Why are they not doing this? Why are they not doing it? But when you sit there and watch them, you realize, well, I need to come back a little bit. They got a lot of stress involved.
One cool thing when Bobby was going through all the data, he realized that a lot of the really good times of dispatch was from one particular telecommunicator. And he all of a sudden realized that this telecommunicator really gets it and is getting the guys out quickly. And so he's provided feedback to say, hey, let's train the trainer. What is this person doing that some of the other telecommunicators might not be as confident in doing? And so it's provided a good feedback loop. So that was kind of cool data that came out of it.
Some of the other things done, like the manager was just talking about, we've implemented some countdown clocks. Basically, it's just a big clock that starts counting down and tells us those, and at certain times it'll start chiming. So if these guys might be dragging their feet a little bit, it kind of reminds them that, hey, we got 80 seconds to get out of here. Well, we developed some SOPs to provide some expectations. So now if Alderman was there, part of our fire department, he would know that we expect him to be out of the house in 80 seconds. Periodic drills to assess proficiency. The BCs all of a sudden will hit the thing and say, all right, guys, hit it. And he's sitting there watching the clock and seeing what we can do to improve it. This last one was a really good thing because what we were finding out through my research was that you're calling a dispatcher via radio and they're extremely busy. It might be 2 minutes before they actually type it in that you're en route. So this has allowed us to really have good times now. So now it's just a matter of hitting a button on our tablet and it automatically goes into CAD, so it's a true time.
The telecommunicators really didn't understand the importance of logging that in a timely fashion. They would just log it until when they got a chance to, and then once the policies and procedures and the reason why came.
And it could be just they're extremely busy. I mean, it's just they're getting pounded.
Fires intimidate most of the telecommunicators anyway.
Just one last question for me. With these times, this is all based on actual fires, not someone called 911 and they have everybody there when they really just need EMS?
We track all times, but what we're talking about today would be alarm activations, somebody pulling an alarm, actual structure fires, because the way the DOI and state fire marshal's office look at this is, if it's a fire alarm activation, we don't know. It could be a kid pulling a station.
It's a structure.
It could be a real fire, so you have to treat it as a fire. So typically what we do, the first dude, as soon as they do what we call an assessment. And he or she gives back over the radio what they're seeing. So basically that tells everybody else they can either slow down or you need to get on there. So basically we have to treat alarm activation just like if it's coming in as a structure fire.
Have you ever been riding down the road and seen a fire truck come flying up behind you and he gets past you and then all of a sudden he just cuts the siren red lights off and drives normal? And you say, you know, that guy just wanted to get through the intersection. That's the reason why. He's had a report back saying it's, you know, we don't need just, you know, shut it down. We used to get so many complaints about that.
So, we've investigated preemption devices. We looked at MLK Boulevard, south of Bern, Highway 70 East. We held a stockholders meeting with EMS, Emergency Management, County Fire Chiefs, Police Department, and then one I forgot we put on here was we actually had a DOT rep that actually controls the lights was a part of that meeting also. And we determined that there's about 25 intersections that would make a difference along those different places. And we'll get into the cost a little bit further.
Real quick, if you're not familiar with this technology, it will actually predict when the emergency vehicle will get to that intersection, and it'll pre-turn the cross street yellow then red, and then make the green light happen in the direction the fire truck or the emergency vehicle is traveling. So it does it in enough time to stop traffic safely, start the traffic in the right direction. So, and then it's so advanced that if the emergency vehicle even puts on its blinker, it'll know that the vehicle's turning and it'll clear out the right traffic pattern for the apparatus to be able to continue through the stoplight. That's what we're talking about.
A study showed there could be as much as a 20% decrease in travel times during high flow traffic. So you could take a minute and a half off some of the travel time if it was working optimally. My concern though is we had looked at James City, but now with the 4-year construction coming up, there's no sense even thinking about preemption there because the construction alone is going to make it a nightmare with 15 to 20,000 cars a day trying to go down to 2 lanes. And another thing we've done is we've implemented GIS maps. Yes, we have maps. We have maps available, but if there again, our thought process on this, if we could do one more thing to have it burn in that person's memory of where this place is, that they can go in and get the truck, let's get the truck rolling. Then the officer can kind of look at the map and while he's riding down the road. Because our procedure before that was always, you always go to the map board, find where you're going, find your hydrant. So this kind of helped us to eliminate that step.
Chief, what was the interest from all those other stakeholders in that preemptive?
I think the interest was there. There's still a little bit of iffiness in the police department being allowed to use them. I think, talking to the DOT guy, but I think because we were utilizing him as a first responder, Broward County actually, what they did was in their police vehicles, they have 3 different levels of putting their lights. And basically, if it's all the way to the 3rd light, that's when it would trigger, and they did it through policy and was able to get around it. But we'd have to jump through some hoops. So, but I think the interest there, again, it's all about the cost, and too, but I think the interest was there.
Is there any funding opportunities from grants or anything, or is this just straight up us?
There was back in the day, but and you'll see a little bit further down the road, it's moving more towards a subscription type than a capital cost thing, and because of that, the grants are kind of blowing away.
Bob, one of the things I didn't see here, and we researched this several years ago, but it seemed that there was quite a bit of a monthly maintenance fee or maintenance fee per device. I didn't see anything here on cost.
I think you'll see later in the slides
Okay.
where we break down the cost, and we'll explain some of that more. Some other things we've done. We have worked closely with the county fire chiefs, and I feel like we have really built a great relationship with them. Mutual aid, and this goes back to answer your question, Mayor, but what we're finding is that their average response times are typically more than our actual second due. Increased training opportunities with mutual aid departments to improve operations and provide expectations. Recent warehouse fire, we had a 3rd alarm fire. We actually dispatched 5 departments. Out of the 5 departments, we had 18 firefighters report to the scene. And actually ended up recalling our own shift because we were about an hour before they were to be on there, so we had another 17. So we ended up with close to 60 folks on that scene.
Approximate response time was 20 plus minutes.
Thereabouts. There again, the data is not real good, but all I had to go by was from the time we asked for them until the time we were able to put them into position, so.
So the question, and I certainly understand the logic, if we're all going to City Hall from here, we're all here now, so it's gonna be quicker for us to get in our cars and go there. Understanding if we're all at home having to do that, that makes perfect sense. My question would be is for Trent Woods, for example, it's one of the most affluent neighborhoods, tax ad norm in North Carolina. They solely depend on volunteers. So they're paying for their fire support through a county tax, I'm assuming. So what is their response time compared to what ours is?
I asked for those the other day. I talked to Station 31 chief. I talked to Station 21 chief, Station 13, because that's typically the ones we called in first. And they were supposed to provide it. I was hoping they had it by today, but they all verbally said, no, we're not meeting we're not meeting.
So how can, I guess my question is, how can Trent Woods, again, a very affluent neighborhood, get by with that sort of response time?
But I mean, it goes back. Let's go back to that slide. I mean, if you today say that these times are acceptable, then they're acceptable. So, but I think we need to go backwards. I think we've got to, as a group, as leaders of the city, determine what we want to be our outcome. But that's what's going to determine all this. I mean, basically, for what they have, 31 is abnormal. Because they have a lot. That's there West Newbury. That's the one on Chelsea. It's a very abnormal situation where they have a lot of 18-year-olds that are hungry to be firefighters. So a lot of them hang around the fire station. But the problem is that 24/7. No, this was at 3:30 in the morning, and I only got 18 people. I would have thought that at 3:30 in the morning, I would have had them coming out of woodwork. I really did. Because typically we do at night. Nighttime is not the situation. And I want to go back to, I'm not going off too far, but I think there's a time and place for them. I think we've just got to decide where that time and place is. They're great folks. Like I say, a lot of our folks work there. So they're great. I mean, they're wonderful organizations. But we've got to determine what our outcome is.
I think you could argue that the Trent Woods leadership has determined that that is acceptable for them. I mean, you can't really interpret it any other way. And the call volume, it's a risk versus reward thing, because their call volume is so low.
To everything there too, their distance isn't really there.
Their call volume is so low that they have determined that's an acceptable risk for them.
I got a question, Bobby. Are we mutual aid with Trent Woods volunteers?
We have a mutual aid pact with the county, period. If they call us, we're going to respond.
Right. And my secondary question, do we follow up? Have we had to respond to any?
31, we have been to several calls in 21, which is going to be James City area.
Right.
I say station numbers, I forget a lot of you don't know the station. So that would be Township 7, which is over in James City.
So another follow-up to that is that us being mutual aid to them, we're actually technically providing service to those areas that are not inside city limits because of that mutual aid. And so essentially the insurance companies are utilizing some of our service as assistance.
Well,
that's how they've done it in other areas.
Recently, I mean, it goes back to the relationship we're building with these chiefs. The chief in 21, Township 7, come to me probably 6 months ago when I was helping them during the daytime, and said, "Look, we're not getting any folks during the day. We need some help. If we call you guys during the day," I said, "Sure. We've got a contract with you. I mean, we want you to come to us." So basically, if they have anything during the daytime now, we get automatic. It's not automatic, but they know to go ahead and get us coming because they're just not getting any folks during the day. Nighttime's not the problem. Daytime is where the problem is.
When you say folks, you mean if there's something going on, they don't have volunteers to go?
They just don't have enough people during the
So
daytime hours.
what if at that same time you're on your way down there to help them and we get a fire here? Are you going to stop there and come back to us?
There again, that's the risk, but fortunately we got enough backup here to be able to cover it. And we release ourselves as soon as possible too. I mean, it's like we have a vehicle crash right now. As part of our policy and procedure, that if a call comes in, And we're not needed there. If there's not a patient being taken care of, there's not anything on the ground, we're gone.
Alderman Odom, one more thing that I wanted to make sure that we all understood too is an example, as Chief Boyd said, we have a lot of our career guys are volunteers, so their training and their knowledge is excellent. One of the things that we need to tell you is though that if we call Township 7 or Station 31 to come to us for mutual aid,
We pay them.
any one of our guys that are there coming as a volunteer has to go on our time clock.
Well, I mean, I think some of what you're saying is it's an advantage to 3121, that the reason they don't have to buy $800,000 fire trucks or ladder trucks is that if they were to have a massive fire, they can always count on the mutual aid of our capital, improve our capital equipment that they don't have to have.
That's why Trent Woods needs to be part of Newburgh.
Have you looked inside that
These are
firehouse
parks,
over in
these are
Township
fire
7?
trucks.
Township 7 is fishing ball game.
They got aerials and everything,
They have
new
most
fire
lots
trucks.
of property.
I mean, it's not the equipment we have though. Is it?
It's probably- they
Is
probably-
it a Quint or a straight stick? Yeah, they're buying Quints.
Okay.
So,
All right, let's talk about fireground now. Now, we talked about travel time. This is, I mean, no matter where you put the fire station, this is how we operate on fireground. So this is some of the things we've done. Actually a year ago, we did some critical task analysis for fireground operational activities following the AFP 1410. What we did was we went out, we did all 3 shifts. We didn't ask them to change anything. We had them to pull up just like out to our training ground. You've got a structure fire, you perform it just like you would every day. And we videotaped it. And with a time. We did everything from the hydrant to the laying of the tube, which is the water supply, to the hand line deployment, to actually hitting the fire with the water. We did all different forms of it. And we found, I mean, because one of the things my guys kept telling me, every shift does it different, every shift does it different. But what we found, there wasn't a whole lot of consistency. But the really good thing we found about it was there were some guys doing some really, really good jobs at hydrant hookups that ended up helping us determine we could save 15 seconds by following this procedure. So basically what we did was we took that and we said, all right, from here on out, everybody will perform the hydrant hookups just like that. So basically when you get your SOP for hydrant hookups, you actually get a little video with it. Now, and you look at the video, this is how we want you to tag a hydrant. From doing the pump operations, we did the same thing, the steps for that, to deploying the hand line. So if you can see quickly, we saved 15 seconds off the hydrant operations. We saved another 25 seconds off a hand line deployment and another 30 seconds on master streams and poly. This opened our eyes big time. And the guys love it because now when a new person walks in the door, we hand them an SOP. If you're, see, again, I forget, I don't have firefighters here. Let's talk about the rig just a little bit, your responsibilities. On that truck, you've got a captain, which is the supervisor. Okay. Also have an engineer, which is the driver. Then you have 2 firefighters in the back. One firefighter is going to be the nozzleman, which he's got the nozzle, and the other one's going to, main responsibility is the hydrant. I mean, something as simple as when they came out of the truck, they grabbed the hydrant bag while they were getting out, walking past it, set it up there and pulling off tube, where everybody else was getting the bag, throwing it out, going there and getting tube, going back and getting the bag. Just simple things like that took 15 seconds off of it. So now when the guys walk up, when a new guy walks in, you hand them an SOP, this is what we expect you out for this position. It's the best thing we ever did. And we're actually getting ready to do it again here in a couple of weeks. And we'd love for you guys to come out and watch. I mean, we had a couple come out last year. I would love for you to come out and watch it because it's really cool watching the guys go out there and try to improve themselves. And what we did some buy-in with it. We said, look, tell us what we can do to make it better. Pulling this tube off truck, can you think of a better way to rebed the hose? So it's been a really good thing for us.
Well, send us an email. We'll probably some of us come out there.
I would love for y'all to. I would love for you to. All right, impact of operational efficiency. With all the above improvements, we can have a positive impact on everything from receiving the call to establishing fireground operations. However, as you saw previously in some of the response times, there are still some areas of the city that are underserved with the current arrangement of stations, assuming that our 8 minutes becomes our outgoing bill. This is an excerpt that I took out of the peer review report, which those that participated should have gotten a copy of. As New Bern has grown, so has the need for fire protection and emergency services. The need for an additional station and response company has developed over time, and the city has several options on how to best address that need. Most of that determination will tie back into the standard of coverage noted earlier. It's basically a standard of coverage just determines where you're going to put the fire stations and deployment and things such as that. In the city of New Bern's size and hazard, staffing is always a key consideration. The department is stretched, and additional investment in safety and training would be prudent for taxpayers. The continuing utilization of volunteers and renewed emphasis on the core services is recommended as well. Get by that slide just 1 second.
Sure.
I want to make sure y'all understand, we still have volunteers too. Matter of fact, we're at probably one of the highest numbers we've been in a while. We're up to 12 right now. And these guys, they don't drive their POV, they pull duty with us. So basically, I would give them a uniform, just like if they were the paid guys. When they pull duty with us, they come do a duty for either a 12 or 24-hour stint, and they ride on their rig. So they're a fire specialist just like the other guys, and they're required to meet the same criteria that the career guys do. Most of them that are there want a job. We're kind of a stepping stone place for somebody who wants a job in the fire department. They know we run enough calls that they're going to get some good experience. So when they go do their application, they can say that they pulled duty with New Bern Fire Rescue and they've got good experience. I'm telling you, it's nothing Chief Boyd has done. I realize with all my heart that it's those firefighters that make that department. And I could not do that. And just back to the question that was asked to me earlier about turnover, that tells you something right there. You know, a good group of guys that wear a mobile hat, never complain, and just wonderful, wonderful folks. And I know without a doubt that I could not do it without them. All right, some options for additional improvement. Number 1 is add additional company at Thurman Road Fire Station. This will eliminate a long second due response time, especially during construction. Apparatus purchase not required. Basically, we were talking about maybe using reserve, one of our reserves in that position, and minor building modifications are required. Option number 2, add preemption devices, as we talked about earlier, to potentially reduce drive times. Again, it would help on MLK, Grand Bern Boulevard, but Thurman Road, being the upcoming construction and the change of the highways, I don't see potential reduction in time there. Additional company at Elizabeth Road Station to reduce second due response time. Apparatus purchase required, minor building modifications required. And then the last option, of course, is plan for a fourth fire station. As we all know, there's large commercial residential development plans in both West New Bern and Craven Forest areas. And once the 43 connector comes in, that's just going to even become more so. And part of the thing we're looking at doing is estimated time frame, phase plan to accomplish land acquisition, architect and engineering fees, and construction over the next few years. So that's basically some of the options that managers and I have kind of, from what we think, done. We feel like that we've done, is there more things we can probably make better, just like we're talking about critical tasks now? There are probably some areas that we can improve upon, but we feel like we've done everything we can, following strategic initiatives to try to improve everything. Now it's kind of, it goes back to that slide where we talked about we need to determine what's acceptable. Would you have any questions about any of these options? Or any you want to drill down on?
Yeah, right. We should have need personnel. So I guess little misleading. So where you have personnel 681, that's in addition to your payroll now.
That's correct.
How for 2 additional firemen?
No, that's going to be 12.
Okay, so you're saying option 1.
That's correct. Yeah, you got 3 shifts, and a company is 4 folks. So you'd be adding an engine and 4 guys per shift, which equals 12
Okay, so that's what you're.
And what that would eliminate is having to send any equipment from
So there's,
the headquarters station.
the reason being is right there. So looking, and we kind of, we worked through this, we were trying to figure out, okay, let's consider current situation, and let's consider exacerbated situation of a second due response for Thurman Road area, okay? The exacerbated being because of the construction of Highway 70 and getting either something from Elizabeth Avenue or something from somewhere else over there. So if you look at Thurman Road, you got a 5-minute and 10-second first due turnout. If you put a second company over there, then at that point, you could actually have a first and second due dispatched at the same time and you're meeting your goal, is what you're doing. Without having to worry about travel times and everything else from your
Without
other
building another
station.
station.
And without having to build another station
Without
to
having to
meet
buy
the need
another.
for the Thurman Road area.
But does that accommodate, Pleasant Hill?
No.
We'll get there.
We'll get there.
Statistically, where are fires happening the most? What time of day?
3 o'clock on Thursday afternoons.
Still, it hasn't changed, has it? It's been 3 to 5 o'clock on Thursday afternoons for years. When kids get home from school and they start
3 to 4 o'clock on Thursday.
they start trying to cook them some French fries or something like that.
Rec program.
Get kids out of the house.
An amazing after-school program.
Fires is our number one.
So on a weekly basis, are there, how many more fires during
Well, let's go back
8 to
to,
5 versus?
all I can go is, I can tell you what thus far, we've had 250, almost 260 calls thus far, which we're probably, we did 1,608 last year, which is about a 27% increase. I thought, at first, when I first glanced at it, it was going to be medical, but we all understood medical was going to increase because we decided to do, the Narcan and overdose stuff like that, trying to help the community. But it only went from 32 to 37%.
So of those
basically-
200 some calls, how many of them were during 8 to 5?
I'd have to run that
Yeah.
for you, but
Reason I'm asking-
statistically, that's the times. It's usually a Thursday afternoon, 3 to 4 o'clock.
The reason I'm asking, I know that with volunteers, a lot of the problem is that they work 8 to 5, and the probability factor is probably not much better from after 12 o'clock, because obviously you got, 16 folks out of 5 departments that showed up to help you with the fire over near the mall. So that's,
And I think, Mayor, that, that was surprising. It really did, the 18. Because typically during the night,
And especially with a major fire.
typically the
They don't
numbers
come.
were hot. But that one really surprised me. I don't know if it's close to the time of needing to get ready to go to work. Because you're talking about 4 o'clock in the morning.
right.
People made it at 1 o'clock, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. I don't know if that is. We have a meeting next week where we're going to critique it. So that's going to be one of the questions I ask, is why do they think the number is wrong?
So on the chart, the year one cost, is that factored into the total 5-year cost? So like on option one, the 717 is in the 3.5?
Yes.
Question, Chrissy, I don't know,
Yes,
did
ma'am.
you do these numbers?
I did.
Okay, so look under option number 4, new station. When
Okay.
you go total 1-year cost, 690, 667.
Yep.
Is that because you financed all of
If you look
that?
at note 1, it says option 4 assumes facility cost is spread over years 1 to 3, and Manning, we started in years 3 to 5. Or in this case, 3 to 10.
So that 690 would be,
Oh, you didn't go.
so that's because you're borrowing the money to build the station. that you
I
have.
just wanted to represent the cost of the station, but also represent that it wouldn't happen in 1 year. So I just split it over the first 3 years and then assumed it was manned in years 3 and beyond.
Now, does this personnel cost, like the $873,838, does that include total benefits, everything? That,
And operations. So, and the effect it has on operational costs.
And actually, I
In
apologize.
addition to what is we already paid out.
Yes, ma'am.
If you can look at the screen, we actually did we had some questions about whether on this preemption devices, if we bought them ourselves as opposed to subscripting with the company for an annual fee if we bought them up front, whether there would be any operating costs. I had factored in on your sheet a replacement 1/10 for 10 years value to replace them in 10 years, but the true operating cost is reflected here, and then we did a 10-year cost at the bottom, just so you can compare. So, but you still see the same on the new station. Yes, we would probably finance it for longer, but you have to pay for it at some point. I just assumed a 3-year time frame, and then started the new firefighters at year 3 and beyond. So that's just for comparison purposes.
I understand you were running some tests. I heard and hear you were running some tests last night on response times at nighttime when the traffic was down. What were the results of that?
From headquarters to Thurman Road, well, this is at 11:30 at night. He said it might have been 1 or 2 cars on the highway. It took 9 minutes and 58 seconds. And then another 3 minutes and 46 seconds from there to Blue Water Rise. So if we were leaving to go to Blue Water Rise, it'd be at 13:35, and that's if everything was perfect.
And that was with no traffic. Did you run out to Craven Forest?
No, I did not. I just did that one. And because there again, the James City is what's concerning me most right now.
Sure.
Because of
Well, I was referring to,
construction.
I was just wondering, spending $500,000 for the pre-emption devices, what kind of time until we can save out of it? You're saying about 20%?
About 20%, but that's the best case scenario.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So you said your main concern for you is Thurman Road?
I have concerns for all of them. But with that construction that's getting ready to occur, not only is it going to affect us getting over there, it's also going to affect Township 7 because their station is right in the middle of the construction. The other station they have is on the other side, and the other one they have is a 1960-some pumper that they've got in their outline station. So basically their 2 main stations that they would be responding out of to us would be in the same situation we're in, trying to get there. And that's why that was kind of boosted up as a concern. It's not that I'm not concerned for other areas. I'm concerned for everything.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying, because like I said, I'm going back to an option where everyone benefits out of the whole kit and caboodle, because there's a lot of money on the table. So,
Well, there's a couple of areas that have major concerns. It's been lacking a long time.
because I heard the whole Pleasant Hill and then
Sure.
a new development over in Ward 4, 6 that, was it West Craven? I don't know if it's
Craven,
Craven.
yeah, West Craven, yeah.
So, I mean, are we making decisions based on the possibility that's going to be built up and we don't know when they're going to build it up? Or
Well,
They're starting soon, is that true?
Which part is this?
West Craven? I heard they
Yeah,
are.
West
Well,
Newbern.
West Newbern, that's what I
Yeah,
meant.
they've submitted plans, but I'm a believer whenever I see the vertical construction.
absolutely. Hey, Chief Boyd, let me ask you a question. So we can cut to the chase. You recognize the fact that a fire station is needed in the Pleasant Hill community, correct?
That's correct.
And you also recognize the fact that it's, at some point in time, a fire station is going to be needed on 17 South, whether it be on the new,
43.
or whether it be on the new corridor or not. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you also recognize the fact that you need a second new engine out of the Thurman Road house. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that's the answer to your question. We also recognize the fact, and I've talked to him about this, we recognize the fact that building a new firehouse isn't going to happen tomorrow. I mean, you're talking about if you hire an architect today, you're talking a year down the road before plans are developed and property is found and stuff like that. So it's a phase-in thing that probably, I'm not even sure if this term on this board you'll see a firehouse if it started working on it right away. You might be able to if they accelerate it, but the what I'd like to see happen is I would like to see us go ahead and move, especially because of the construction over there. Go ahead and move on the much needed assistance on the Thurman Road house, and at the same time, let's look at hiring architects to start the design phase. And once the design phase is completed, then by that time we'll probably know more about what's going on. We've got property that's available to us for free, that we need to research. So if we can go ahead and tie down the Thurman Road issue and then have some funds to start the design phase of a new house. Wherever the chief seems that needs to be located first is where we'll go. I'd be willing to bet you Barbara's gonna tell you that she wants it out in her area. So, you know, I myself, and I asked you to pull that time, but myself, when I was the chief, we saw and the resident was very upset, but we saw a house on 55, just past E&J Automotive, that the gentleman was frying some french fries or something like that. His stove caught on fire, and by the time the fire department got there, the fire was fully involved and through the roof of the house. And that's totally unacceptable, fire coverage. So, I think this board's going to have to recognize the fact that we have to have some additional fire stations, and the fire department understands and recognizes the fact that it's not going to happen tomorrow. We can't afford to do it all at one time, but we need to start laying the groundwork down to start building and finding a fire station, designing the fire station, getting a shovel-ready project for maybe some grants that could become available during that time. But I know, at least when I was fire chief, there was no grants available unless it was shovel-ready. Is that still the case, Bob?
It has to be shovel-ready.
Okay.
Which shovel-ready basically means it's ready to go.
Yeah.
Permits, you've already done the landscape, the architect design, things such as.
So, I mean, we need to go ahead and look at hiring an architect, start getting a station design. Maybe we can use some of the plans that we've already got, you know, just update them a little bit, tweak them a little bit, save some money there. And they really need to concentrate on the Thurman Road area.
Quick question. When the first part of the slide, you spoke about we as a board need to make a decision whether or not these times are acceptable, correct? And so when we see here on options for additional improvement for Thurman Road, you know, we eliminate second due time response by, you know, obtaining more firefighters. Okay, so with that, if say hypothetically we say we're satisfied with the time that we already have, but because you said if we have volunteers, you know, we contract out or we have volunteers, that doesn't change the due time, but you know how it's reported, but you still have that extra help that you need. You see what okay, so
I mean, if you say that's an acceptable time, then you could say no firefighters would do volunteer. And is that what I'm understanding you're saying?
Say that again.
If you say that those response times are an acceptable time,
based on black and white.
that's correct. And then the volunteers would meet that acceptable time, then no firefighters.
If we were to get more volunteers or contract out, I'm trying to say it like
Your second due times are not going to change much.
on paper.
Period. Not going to change whether you use volunteers or as the current are. The only way you're going to change second due times is by augmenting that station with a personnel and an apparatus. That's the only way you can change the times.
Also, we buy another truck and get more employees.
That's correct.
But he
Contracted. So
I
the
don't
whole
think
what I'm saying about
you need another
what I'm saying about is volunteers. Why are we not able to utilize the volunteers or hire? You know.
Well, you can utilize the volunteer, but it's not going to affect the time
That's
because
what I'm okay.
because there are times, again, as a reminder, they've got to leave their house, get to the station, get the truck, and then respond. And then again, too, our call handling time, we don't have control
I
of
think
it
she's
either.
talking about being that your volunteer numbers are up to 12.
Oh.
If you had volunteers in the house.
We do that already.
Yeah, that's
We
the first
do
place
that
I
already.
go.
Whenever they pull duty, we stick them, that's where they're assigned, is at that station. So that's gonna be,
And how many are at that station now?
right now, we've got 12 volunteers, but out of those 12, 6 of them are still in training. One's in Washington DC because he works at Pentagon, and he's up there right now. He's in the military. And the other 3 are in military and they're deployed right now, but they're should be back in time. But typically, when they pull duty with us, that's the station we put them.
Chief, question on the personnel cost. We see that 681. I know that Alderman Astor asked about a SAFER grant. for personnel, and that would be to hire, is it 3 or is it 3 year?
Ever how many is for 3 years.
For 3 years. Is
They
that
go.
something that we could get that would help defray that 681 and save us some money, therefore making it more affordable for us to get this option 1 at Thurman Road?
Depends on what you want to do. I
Does
mean,
that
a
mean-
lot of it's going to depend on your options. I mean, you can't get 2 safer grants at the same time, correct? I
Within 3
understood,
years.
I understood Bobby said the likelihood that we get a safer grant is very unlikely anyways because of our cash position.
Yeah, I heard that too.
So,
But
I mean,
but
it
regardless, I'm saying if
doesn't
we
say
could-
we can't apply for
Right,
them.
that's what I mean.
But essentially, it's a 3-year grant at 100%, and then you're on the hook at that point. If we were to get it, the question would be is, you know, if you even had an option where you could potentially get one, would you rather get it to get 12 firefighters here or for the full station? Depending on what the board, we just don't know.
Well, by the time, if we apply for it today, or when it comes available, and typically they announce in August and September and October, that way.
But they're already behind on just the announcement.
Yeah.
It's got me concerned.
It may not even be in the
I mean,
budget.
funds may not even be
That's
there.
what I'm saying.
So-
I mean, usually typically January, it's not even come out yet.
So in,
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
in January, you typically can start applying for them.
Right.
You submit them by March or something like that, and they start awarding, and it takes 6 months or so for them to award them. Yeah, and then, yeah, but we got over $1 million on the last safer grant that we applied for. But you have to understand our financial situation at the time was bad. And that's the reason. Because one of the questions they ask you, and you have to submit accounting information and everything else, and one of the questions they ask you is, why can't you pay for this yourself?
Okay, just asking the question, that's all.
So Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we were trying to brainstorm some options that don't just jump to a fire station. So one idea we were just throwing around was, let's get Thurman Road, that's the one that keeps your fire chief awake at night, right? When that construction happens, we are not gonna be able to get a second truck down there in any good amount of time. So maybe we try to attack that problem, put some more firefighters there through the construction period, which is 3 to 4 years. And then if we have decided to move forward with a fire station, you could potentially move those firefighters to the new fire station in year 3 or 4 because the road will now be open and maybe our times will be better. Now with all that construction way down at the, way down Old Airport Road, that still might be a consideration we will determine over the next 3 or 4 years. And then maybe to improve the Highway 55, Elizabeth City issue, we look at the preemption devices, try to help change our stoplights, get us down the road quicker, see how that goes for a year or 2, and then we might look at option 3 and add another complement to Elizabeth Avenue while we're still waiting to see if Craven Forest and West Newbern take off. If they do, that's probably going to drive that need, but we'll go ahead and start planning for the 4th fire station. But those are just some ideas we had thrown around to try to not force you guys into having to make a decision to put all this capital cost in a new station right away. We're trying to be creative and helpful.
For what you just said, how we're saying about the construction that's coming, so I can understand, you're saying, getting a fire truck, meaning like from New Bern to be able to assist. How many fire trucks are at Thurman Road right now? One. So up there it says apparatus purchase not required. So
Yeah,
we
we
would
have
need
two.
one and employees.
We have 2 reserve engines in place right now, so if a truck goes down, which we have them all the time, as a temporary thing until the funds are available to, and that truck's already part of the capital plan to be replaced anyway. So I'm saying we'll just utilize that one reserve there as a temporary until it comes into the time to replace it.
Okay, so you move it down there. So really Thurman Road needs some more people, some more employees. And if we went with that, if we went with them needing more employees, that's option 1.
That's correct.
Okay, and we got more employees, then what's the response time? What's the goal set on that? How are we, where are we getting
Then you
to?
would follow into, again, what we decide is our outcome. Then we would follow into the confine the room of order.
You see that time up there where it says under Thurman Road, first due is 5:10, second due is 12:15. What you would do is you would change both of those times to the 510, to the first due.
Essentially, you're going to dispatch first and second due out of that same station.
At the same time.
And so you'll,
But ultimately, we can sit here and run all these scenarios and everything else, but go back to the,
here,
the 8 minute.
Here.
Sorry.
no, good, where you
I
want
mean,
to.
this is really boiling down to what? This is really boiling down to what is our outcome-based performance goals? What is this board expecting of us to achieve in our fire response? Are you wanting to keep it to confined room of origin? That's your 8 minute mark. Or, and then you start talking about as that curve steepens, it starts going up as a percentage of the property destruction, as well as loss of life or risk to our own staff members trying to get in there and fight the fire. So that's really what we've got to decide here.
And you're saying the timeframes that you gave us, that's based on like law association, like I'm a real estate broker, I have to be in certain guidelines regardless of any situation.
That's a recommended benchmark.
So it's recommended.
That's right. But
Okay.
back to what the manager is saying, you, as a leader in the city with us, need to determine what that is.
So the recommended is 8 minutes.
That's the recommendation for
But
NFPA.
we as a city want to be at 5. You as the chief, you want to be at 5, right?
I don't think you're following it.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
can you explain to me?
Well, I don't know if I can either.
All right,
But-
okay. Let's go back to the fire group, which shows all the stations. Headquarters is meeting the need right now.
Mhm.
If you were to say, if we would go back, Alderwoman Harris, and say, we want to confine it to room of origin, we want to make survivability high, headquarters is meeting the need. If that's what we determine. These other 2 stations are not.
Right.
And
And by adding the personnel as a temporary thing while we're waiting on this determining on the fire station, you would take those 2 there and bring them over there, just like you're seeing headquarters, just by adding that engine company.
To Thurman Road.
yeah.
Both those stations. Option 1 is Thurman Road, then option 3, I think, is Elizabeth
Well,
Avenue.
hang on, Bobby. The preemption devices could potentially move Elizabeth Avenue well left. That's something we may want to consider, so you're not having to buy another $700,000 worth of firefighters to go to Elizabeth.
And how would the second company at Thurman help Elizabeth Avenue come down?
That's the second company, that's the other option, second company, I'm saying, if you were to add a second company to.
Everybody, take
Wow.
a look at this sheet right here. I'm going to try to explain this a little bit, okay? Right now, headquarters, this is the way it's saying, headquarters within, let's say we pick 8 minutes. I'm not putting that word in your mouth, I'm just saying, let's use 8 minutes for now. 8 minutes confined to room of origin. That's this point right here. Right now, headquarters is meeting it. That's what Bobby's saying is our first and second due because they're getting there. Thurman Road, we talked about adding the personnel. If you add the personnel, then that's the second due. These green arrows are the second due response time. 12 minutes, basically, is how long it's taken to get there. You reduce that down to 5 minutes if you dispatch a first and a second due out of that station, which means now you've pulled Thurman Road to right here. Okay? Now, if you do the preemption devices out on some of those roads, if you get a 20% gain out of Elizabeth Avenue, the hope would be that if you're at 10 minutes,
right? Is it
20%,
20%.
20%
travel time.
travel time during these high volume, high response times, the hope would be is if you're at 10 minutes response, 20% of 10 minutes would be 2 minutes. That puts you at 8 minutes.
And the reason why that you're seeing the headquarters station meet that time frame is because they are already running a first due and second due engine out of there at the same time.
Right, and so what I'm asking is the recommendation is 8 minutes, right? Is that what it's, so we're deciding if 8 minutes is what we want to agree on,
The
correct?
NFPA recommended benchmark is 8 minutes as a response time for second due.
Right, so either way, we need to do something so that we can at least meet 8 minutes, correct? Okay.
That's
We
the
would.
board's choice.
And that's what we're.
And that's what we're saying. The board has to make a choice here of what is considered to be an acceptable second due response time.
Right.
All right, Chief, I have a couple questions. Do we have an idea of what the architectural if we did something like start at least on architectural without doing anything, do we have an idea of what that would cost?
Can you pull up my capital plan?
Jordan might know. Jordan, how much architectural fees to design a, just so you know, there you go. How much architectural fees to design a fire station approximately?
A good, back a napkin, 20-25% of the construction cost gives you a good design and construction management fee. So if you got your estimate for construction.
So $2 million would be $500,000.
If I recall, the $2 million included the cost
Okay.
of the architect.
Okay.
It does.
A couple $100,000.
Would get you what you need.
166.
So then if we had a second fire station, or we had a fourth fire station somewhere in the area you're talking about, would that help to reduce the times at Thurman Road because it would take their response, not Thurman Road, Elizabeth Avenue, because then they wouldn't have to respond to areas like Crayburn and the other one?
Absolutely.
So it fixes that without having to put another engine there. When we open up that other station, it will help to fix Elizabeth
The two
Avenue.
engine at Elizabeth was a temporary
I knew that.
thing while we're waiting on a fire station. It would help reduce the second due. First due would definitely increase also in that area by adding a station, because running both of them out the same station, it could be at the exact same time. Where first due might be 2 minutes over here if it's closer.
But fixing Elizabeth does not fix Thurman, right?
Not
Right, so if for me, how I'm operating, you are the expert. So for me to have a conversation with you, and I'm trying to make an educated decision for the people that I represent in my ward and the city as a whole, which option would you prefer us to lean towards that's going to benefit a greater outcome for?
I appreciate Alderman Harris. Here's where the difference between your position and my position. I'm a steward of this department, and I've got, as fire chief, we need to decide what's best for the community, using research and all the data, research, things like that. From your perspective, it's hard for me to answer that question because it depends on what the purse strings are. I mean, if you were to ask me, hey Bob, we're going to give you a check today. But to me, they all need. The only one that just stands up a little bit higher than that to me right now is James City, because I know there's a known construction issue coming up, and there's still some unknowns over here. I mean, you still got to wait on the 43 connector to get in place.
But it's not here.
That's right.
And
I mean,
so we
there
need
are,
to take care
but
of right
it goes
now
back to
situation.
what Alderman Asher was saying. I'm a planner. I like to look at 5 years from now. So when we as a department look at things, when my command staff look at things, we're trying to look out years to go. So we're looking at these properties and saying they're going to develop. As soon as that 43 connector is going to develop, so why not don't we start looking now and planning for the fire station, even if it just means doing the architectural stuff, start doing, getting it where it's close to being shovel ready. So 3 to 5 years now, we know, hey, it's doing what we thought it was. If it didn't, then we can always pull the chain back and say, hey, we'll just put it back on hold for a while. But the needs are already there.
Spent the money to start the process, and
But
that
the
money
needs are
can go
there.
towards-
It's just how much of it.
Eventually you'll use them.
I still feel like we're missing a key piece of information, and that is the actual, how many structure fires out of the 260 calls you've had here today, 50 of them you said were considered structure. We don't know how many, you can look it up, you don't know how many of those were actual structure fires. So we're talking about over 10-year costs of $7.7 million. I'd like to be able to say on a yearly basis, this is going to help us keep 10 homes from a fire spreading out outside of the one room. Or is that going to help 300 homes? To me, we're lacking that. And we're looking at data and the science. I can get all the drive, I can get all that. But that's what could be. And we've got to look at what's actually happening. When we're talking about new homes. New homes have, the latest and greatest from a fire. You got the wired smoke detectors, and older homes don't have that. You know what I'm saying? There's so many different factors, and I feel like we're taking this science and we're saying let's go do this, and we're not actually looking at the actual data that we have to get on.
Yeah, and I somewhat agree and disagree with you, Alderman Odom, but it's our responsibility to offer the same protection to the citizens of New Bern, they're taxpayers as well, as what I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, if I lived in Craburn Forest, I would be beating the door down. You know, wondering the reason why I don't have any fire protection out there. If I lived in James City, I would be doing the same thing. These are taxpayers also, and they pay the same rate that what I pay, you know. So they deserve the same amount, the same quality service as what the rest of the citizens in the city of New Bern deserve. And they, believe it or not, when they were annexed, that's what they were told they would get.
Before I would make a decision on that, because option 1 is 3 cents on your tax rate that you're going to raise. Option 2 is 0.2, because once you pay for it one time, you don't have a whole lot of recurring costs. Option 2B is 0.2. Option 3 is almost 3 cents, and option 4 is 4 cents. So before I go out and say, I'm willing to raise the tax rates this, I want to talk to those people and say, here's what you're going to get, and here's what you're going to pay for it. Do you want it?
I tell you what, go talk to, and I won't say the name, go talk to the gentleman that his wife works here with the city, that their house burnt down, or nearly burnt down into Bern, because the fire department had to sit outside and wait 13 minutes for the other fire truck from headquarters to get to their house. Do you by any chance have those times? I asked you to bring a couple of them. Is that one of them you brought? I mean, what was the time, what did it take second do to get there? And they were pumped because they knew that they had a major structure fire.
Second due was 17 minutes.
17 minutes that fire truck had to sit. Those 4 firemen had to sit on a man's property with that owner of that house and wait for a fire truck to get there before they could start fighting fires.
Great point. So how many of those have happened in 1 year's time? How many of those happened?
Bobby, what's happened? Do you have the time frame with that one I was talking about on 55 that I asked you to get?
It was 7 minutes and 8.
So 7 minutes first due, 8 minutes second due. Okay. And do you, how about Craburn Forest? Have you got any stats from out there when that house burnt down in Craburn Forest? And that was at 3 o'clock in the morning.
8.5 first due, 11 minutes second.
That's a lot of time.
So it's one house.
Well, how about if it's your house?
Well, quite frankly.
Or how about if someone dies as a result of that one house? You can't say it's one house. They're
many-
taxpayers of the citizens of the city of New Bern.
But we can't put policemen on every corner. We can't have a fire station.
No,
every
I
place
agree
we
with you.
want.
But
So-
you can have a policeman in the zone or in the area. We don't even have that for the fire.
I just have a quick question since I'm new to city government. When these developers want to come in and put up new homes and stuff, I mean, do we have these conversations in these plans on saying if you're going to develop out this far, you know, you might need to develop a fire station, or is it the city's responsibility to,
You
you know?
can't put that on
We
the
can't.
developer.
We can't make a developer build a fire.
We have in
We
the
don't
past.
have the ability to take care of the
It'd be
homes that we
legal now.
got now. Would we want more people to come in if we can't even service the ones that we have now? Hypothetically, like in Taberna, it grew so fast and we're not.
Well, it's not, Bern's not the issue.
It's you know,
Carolina colors, it's hard.
it's a delicate balance about what you do there. Okay, Blue Water Rise was right at the 5 mile mark, right? So Blue Water Rise is the one they're building at the end of Old Cherrypoint Road, or Old Airport Road, sorry. Old Airport Road, so you're at 5 miles. Anything beyond that, yeah, you got a tough decision to make whether you're gonna build a fire station or not, because we're not gonna be able to provide them coverage based on what the insurance says. They basically would have no fire protection or
They
volunteer.
pay
fire.
insurance as a no
Well,
fire
actually,
station.
that particular place there is a guy that's on the land of word, there's no other fire station within 5 miles.
But we do look at that, like Bobby said in his presentation, you know, when items come to us through development review, developers looking to build a piece of property that's not in the city limits, that's one of the things we look at, fire, police, water, sewer, all that stuff, and then ultimately to the board, and the board goes through a process to where they can choose to annex it or not.
Yeah.
That's stuff the board has to decide of, should we annex this? Because there's the potential that we may have, because of the density, we may have to build a fire station, or because of our service area, we may have to, and we would show you that or tell you that within the report that says, you know, hey, this is a great piece of property. We could look at ad valorem's of, I mean, you got 1,000 lot subdivision that's got $200,000 houses in it. You know, you're going to turn away a lot of revenue potentially forever on and growth. But you may have to build a fire station to do it.
Based on any decision, we gotta, you know, like Jeff was saying, you know, if we decide as a board, we're gonna have to raise rates to be able to accommodate this. Correct?
Well, we will absolutely, if we're given direction to move forward, we will absolutely apply for a safer grant to try to defray these costs, but I think, like, both fire
At year
chiefs
4,
said,
it's still yours.
the likelihood is low, we'll get it, and at year 4, you're gonna incur every bit of that cost.
You had to, well, I guess, you know, basically, when you look at the reason the city grew that way and did the development such as the Bern and Carolina Colors, all of that is because they got the tax value out of it. They're larger homes paying more tax value. So if you took the amount of tax value that's getting out of there, those people are not only paying for what this is, but they're paying for some of the other stations in Thurman Road and somewhere else because the tax value is so much greater out there. That's no, you know, we have to protect a $50,000 home as much as we have to protect a $500,000 home. But they deserve equal protection, no matter what they are. So, I mean, I think we pay enough on that side.
I mean, that's our mission statement.
Absolutely. Absolutely, just as it is for, you know, fire. And I remember that was some of the real angst when we started annexing these areas like Pleasant Hill and whatever, where they would be.
The last few words is by providing accountable and equitable service to all citizens.
When you said the fire station plans in the West New Bern area, what area are you exactly speaking of?
For
Say West New Bern,
For the 43 connector and Highway 70.
down by the Craven 30?
Well, it's called West Newbern now, not Craven 30.
Okay, all right.
So it would serve that Pleasant, you know, it would have enough response time to get to both places.
So it's down in that particular area where it's already, where is that?
Well, we've looked at some potential locations of the fire stations that would best serve, considering future growth and the coverage of the 5-mile rule and the 1.5-mile rules, and tried to do that. And the best locations that we've identified fire stations to go are where the current terminus of 43 connector is, where the T is. That would be where one would potentially be, and the other would be if you laid them out appropriately to cover all of the areas with the standard of coverage, depending on what the board chooses. And that's the reason why we as staff are emphasizing on what's acceptable to the board, because that makes a difference as to whether or not we have 1 fire station, 2 fire stations. I mean, you may say you want 3-minute response time. We have to build 7 fire stations. I mean, that's crazy, but I mean, you know, it all boils down to what's acceptable to this board. But the other one would be over in the Pleasant Hill area, close to where the water plant location is at. Is that correct?
55.
Yeah, on 55.
And there's also some property over there that has been identified that where we might not have to buy any property to build a
Well,
station.
both of those, we probably won't have to buy a property.
Yeah.
The one we had that we looked at there, where that one was at, was a warehouse piece. They were looking to do things to us, but after looking at it and redoing all the maps, I'm not sure that's the best location.
I just think that we have kicked this can down the road long enough as far as providing service to the Pleasant Hill community, and I think it's time that we at least put forth funds to hire an architect, and that's going to take us. It's going to take a year to complete that. At the same time, the chief can start looking for maybe some property to identify that, and then we decide when the next phase will come in. But at least we'll have a shovel-ready project sitting on our desk saying we're ready to build a fire station when the time comes. Yeah, I think that we need to address the Thurman Roadhouse and put funds up towards an architectural fees.
Let me ask you a question. I know that the school system got tired of these individual plans with architects, and they went out and started kind of cloning
Yeah.
schools and saved a lot of architect fees that way. Is there not some architect that could be hired that we want flavor for of 25 stations somewhere in North Carolina, that we look over there at the Chevy Impala versus the Ford Taurus, and we decide we want the Chevy Impala, and you contact that architect firm and say, we're not going to pay $500,000 to design this, we might pay you $50,000. Is that what we do, or do we just do this value engineered, site-specific plan that we have to pay all that money for?
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
I think you definitely
Don't
could do
reinvent
that.
the
I think you definitely could work something out like that, Mayor, with the architectural plans. Engineering is a different story because every site's different. You don't know what soils you're dealing with. I mean, you don't want, big pumper trucks sitting on concrete, on soil underneath of it that's not suitable. So, I mean, you're gonna have to do the soils analysis. You're gonna have to do that kind of
You
stuff.
can do that with a map. I mean, I
Have
understand what you're
any
saying.
house engineers that can do that?
Maybe you can do that. That's exactly what's gonna happen, is you're gonna wind up sinking the building.
And there are architects out there that do nothing but build fire
What
stations.
happens?
You know,
Probably
them-
don't
and,
get
and
them.
as I was saying, those architects out there do nothing but build fire stations. And I'll tell you this, that
I could,
Havelock hired one to design that West End station they have, but they had to let him go and hire an architect here because he wasn't on site enough. And the construction was slowed down quite a bit because of him being in Charlotte and not being here when questions popped up. I don't care. I mean, if you can find a suitable architect, I agree. If we can save money by hiring an architect, just let me see your book of plans, and let's go thumb through his book of plans and find one that might suit us. I'm all for that. I just think we need to get the ball rolling somehow. It's been way too long now.
like I said, I think with architectural plans, I'm sure you can work one. I mean, I'll call city manager in Statesville because I was there when they built that fire station.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy. I mean, I might even still have a copy of it on my old computer at home.
Mark, is it true that the architectural fee is just a small subset of what we were talking about as far as architects and engineering, the engineering part of it, or are they kind of tied together and you got to do them all at once?
Well, you're going to have to do them all.
Okay.
And also that price
Your
is
surveying costs, that's
Gotcha.
you're going to have to do all that.
also that price that you had of like $150,000. That include supervising the construction, right? So I mean that we wouldn't even need to go there at this point in time, would we, Mark? I mean, since we're not planning on doing construction, we're just in the design phase.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just in design phase, I mean.
Design phase, and then where we go from there with that. I mean, for me,
You can
I
apply grants and stuff like that. That's what you're saying.
And it would take a
That's
year
the
to do that.
shovel ready. Take a year to do that.
so
at
the
least.
design is the shovel ready, and if you don't get any funding for it,
Then you
we
decide
gotta
if you
come
want to
back
do
as a board and say,
Say,
okay,
let's
we
build
want to
it.
get
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
But we
I think
spent
that's
$500,000 to
no.
draw
That's what
up
we're
some
saying.
plans.
We don't want. That's what we don't want to do. That's what we're saying. Find something that's ready. That would be
Kind of cookie cutter type
correct.
design that some architects already drawn up that we can just kind of take and modify to suit our needs.
So basically, Mark, you just need directions now to move forward to get someone. to look at.
Do some
Can I
paperwork.
ask a question?
Sure.
Why can't we use the plans or designs of the station you already have?
That's antique, obsolete. I mean,
Well, I mean, you
Even
might be
base
able
size.
to, but there probably would be so many changes that it would be easier to start over with. We actually talked about doing that when we built, was it the Elizabeth Avenue station plans that we were going to use over there, and the architect looked down and just said that the code's changed so much and there's so many new things out now that you'd probably be, but that's basically what we're talking about doing, Barbara, is finding an architect that does nothing but build fire stations.
Current enough.
I mean, the Thurman Road Bay is about 30 feet too short, isn't it? If you were gonna do it again, the base.
It's short. It's definitely
not do
short.
that again.
That was definitely, and that was another reason why that station was built like that. Basically, is because we didn't know how long it was going to be there, because we didn't know what type of growth was going to take place out there. I mean, that's basically a metal building.
I do have one question. Did anybody
For temporary
on
use,
staff
that's a waste of
look
money.
at the Sanford, North Carolina
How do you
model
do it, something you don't know what's there?
of the joint partnership with volunteers where they man the most problematic fire time of the day with staff? Did anybody look at that? Is that alternative 5?
I mean, we can
Are you
certainly,
familiar with that? We talked a little bit about it. Are you familiar with it?
Talking about part-time firefighter.
Yeah, I mean, as a temporary fix for second due. I mean, you know, when we're discussing these things, I appreciate all this. This is great. And I'm really very proud of the fire department and where we are, and certainly our ISO rating. But, you know, when I see these numbers, and if you did all this, this is like 7-8 cents, Mr. Sabatelli, is that not correct?
9.
It's 9 cents. Okay. Well, we just the other night added $300,000 on salaries for next year. We just the other night added probably, if you zero budgeted the police department, we added about $300,000 to that. That's 2 cents right there. So if we did everything on here, that's 9 cents. Now that's 11 cents. So from that, the question is are we willing to raise taxes from 46 cents to 57 cents to do all this, or do we look at alternative 5? And that is, it's not even been mentioned is the problem I have with these presentations. I mean, it would be fine for it to be mentioned and you guys just to really pick it apart as to why not do it, but at least give us that option that's not even discussed. And I'm sure some of these board members are not even aware of it.
What is 5?
That's 50.
If 5 is not there, and that is Sanford, North Carolina has a similar fragmented donut hole geographical ineptness of supplying equitable firefighting to all its citizens, and they partner with volunteer departments by the most statistically highest volume time of the day, which is 3 o'clock on Thursday, and other days when kids are getting home and making things on the stove or whatever that might be. They know when that area is. They studied it, and they work with volunteer departments for those 8 hours of the day with a 4-man shift that meets OSHA requirements. And then this is for that period of time which is most needed. There's your second duty. But that's not even mentioned. Is what I just want. I want the board to think of everything before they spend the money.
And I just want to say that I understand the severity of everything, but just like the mayor said, if we do any of these ideas, I have to go back to my constituents and say we're raising the rent, the rates, and what have we done in my ward.
Haven't gotten that far yet, have we?
But I mean, if you look at the numbers, I mean
But I
that
haven't seen
where are we
we
pulling
doing all
this money
this?
from? Even if we do just one, if you don't get the grant, okay, and we do option 1 and put 12 new employees there and we don't get a grant, where is that money coming from? And we have to budget for it. You get what I'm saying? So at some point you will have to, and it's okay because that's how it works. But we all represent a section of the city, and we have to go back and, just like if we at the board says no, people are going to come to you or come to Barbara and say, well, we still need a fire station. So, what's the problem? We're not getting our fire station. On my end, it's going to be, well, I have to pay more taxes on my home, and there's still no community center, no parks, nothing that my citizens want in their area. So I think of it as that way. If we could get a fire station and we got a meeting space, like how Barbara said, she needs a community center in her area, but there's also a fire station. If we can combine certain ideas together and spend this money, then I can agree to that. I know I heard, down the road maybe, you add more fire stations and build more development, you need more police station, or the police station is growing and might need to have more communication center. I mean, let's think real big. If we're going to spend the money, let's do it one time where it's going to be a benefit and we don't have to come back, unless 30, 40 years from now, you're right, I'm not sitting at the table because I'm going to be in DC discussing things like this. You know what I mean? That's just what I'm trying to say, because in some of these wards, we already can't afford to pay what we pay now. And then to add more.
Well, that's all guidance that we need to give the fire chief when he starts designing a fire station. You know, if we want him to design a fire station with a room on it that's big enough for to have a community meeting in, the only thing we need to do is tell him, build a fire station and build a room.
Not a community meeting, we need a community center.
I think that's a totally, and I want everybody on this board to get what they want. I really do. I mean, I want everybody to be able to go home. But the community center is totally a different, it should have absolutely nothing to do with fire station. I think that what is needed here, this is my thought, and I've studied this and studied it, is to proceed with a $50,000 plan for a future fire station under option 4. And I don't care about the $2 million. That might sound a little bit callous, but that's just a one-time expense. It's not a recurring expense. What bothers me is $873,000 a year. And yes, this city is growing and does need to get ready. But to me, from a firefighting standpoint and not a community center, which that really needs to be addressed for certain areas of town that do not have it. I think that for the next 10 years in New Bern, North Carolina, what you need is the option 4 consideration and probably getting at a reasonable price a set of plans that could be modified, that we don't do it for another 2 years, that, you know, for $20,000 they get redone. We do that all the time. We throw money away all the time on studies that we never used. And then you take and you do the Sanford, North Carolina model with the 31 and 21 of the 8 hours of the day that are most probability-wise going to have a fire. And you put personnel at those 2 locations, if you could partner with those 2, the West New Bern and the James City. And then you, I don't care if it doesn't show up on paper. I know that you got your second dues where they need to be.
Well, the West, putting extra people at West New Bern is not going to change. They're not going to change your response times that much. I mean, what's the first duty?
I'm gonna tell you what. If you're sitting in Cypress Shores where I live, and you got a fire at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and that truck comes out of Chelsea Road, which I can hear an alarm like it's in my backyard, and it gets there before. If this worked out with like the Sanford model, and that truck gets there before the Elizabeth Avenue, so be it.
I got a question.
That would be a first. That would be a first duty.
But that's not what our times are showing.
I mean, I appreciate all that, but you know what Mark Twain said about statistics. And if you don't know, look it up. I mean, it's a beautiful saying about statistics.
I understand what you're saying too. That's why I was saying the whole black and white. If you know, that's statistically how you're seeing it. But if you implement something different.
And see, to me, that's something, everybody kind of gets something out of it if you can get past this need for community centers. That's a separate item, really.
Oh, no, I just mentioned that. Now, I know we're not talking about that right at this point in time. We're talking about this fire, which is most important. Okay, I think it takes precedence over the community center right now because we got people's lives and homes involved. So it's not about the community center right now, it's about the fire station. And the way I'm looking at it, we got what, hundreds of homes coming out there in West New Bern that's going to serve, that fire department will serve. I think a lot of them's coming in your area, isn't it? A lot of homes, you know.
And that's your item number 4.
Exactly.
I would definitely be for at least pursuing a cheaper option for the architect. I don't want to pay an architect $500,000. I believe that we should go out and put it out there and see what we can do to find it, and at least get to the shovel ready, get our plans all in place, because the movement's out there. We got to provide the infrastructure. But Chief Boyd, I want to say this to you. You are a fire professional. I have no fire knowledge. I would say 90% of this board has.
Hold on, I want Chicago Fire.
Has no fire experience. I have to defer to you. So I have to defer to you and your expertise. While it sounds good about volunteers, that piques my interest. You know, I'm always about saving $1. You know, I have to defer to you in that if that's not a comfortable way for us to service our citizens, then I somewhat have to defer to you, because I can't judge that. I know about volunteers. In any organization I've worked at, we said, well, we'll get volunteers. And then what happens is, you know, who decided to go on vacation with their family, or it was not structured, so they weren't there when we needed them. So it's always been a problem for me. But when you pay somebody, they show up, because they know they have to show up. It's different than a volunteer. So
well, they're there ready to respond.
Well, but I'm just saying, I've worked with volunteers, I've worked with paid people, and the paid people are there because they have to be. The volunteers feel like they can walk away. So I would like to look at a combination, and I thought this was, in a sense, I'm not here to talk about what, if it's gonna raise taxes or not. I just, if this is something we so want to do, we can put it in the mix, and when you bring us the budget, that's when we make the decision over the total budget. Now, we may say this is important enough, and over here is not as important, and we may have to cut something over there. I don't know, but I haven't seen the whole picture yet. So I'm not willing to cut this off until I see the whole big picture, because there might be something else I could massage a little bit to make this happen.
Well, what I'm being saying, and I want to help out with what you're saying. A lot of what we're talking about is not 30,000 people today. It's housing starts in the future. And, 5 years up the road, do you have numbers, JR, do you have numbers on how many, this is about the growth of New Bern. And so, hypothetically, I don't have the figures, let's say there's $10 million more tax base in 5 years. I don't know what the figure is because I've not done it. I don't think we should be scared off by the fact that I mentioned the 9 cent, depending on the growth factors of New Bern. Because that's where I know the police department got out there with the Homeland Security grant and hired 12 new police officers, I believe, or was that fire?
That was fire.
That was fire. And then it ran out after 5 years, right? And you had how many new employees that we had to absorb that 6th year, right?
Was it 12 or 12?
It was 12, wasn't it? Yeah. And so I don't want to be teased by a grant, because a grant is just something to tease you into taking a move that maybe you should move or maybe you shouldn't.
Well, it'd be nice, but you can't count on it.
Right.
And
it's not recurring. It's not sustainability.
Have you read last year's grant by any chance? I mean, was it in last year's about the financial need? Yeah.
Financial need is still high.
Yeah. So our chances of getting a safer grant is slim with the amount of money that we have in reserve.
So, Mr. Sabatelli, if West Craven took off, and we already know what's going to happen in James City, 5 years up the road, 5 cent or 6 cent, would we pretty much, and I know it's not fair to ask you, but you are the finance guy, so you're the only one in the room that can take that hit. Would we not absorb a considerable amount of that from the growth factor, which we can't put all our eggs in the basket of fire protection. We do have to look at water, sewer, police, cemeteries, and all the other things, the components of government. Would we offset that right much with growth? How much?
I can't guarantee that you would offset
But
everything,
some.
but you would be able to offset some. That's just generally part of growth in the city.
But what about if you just go ahead and look at the, that place you just named, to look at to see what it would cost to start the process?
Well, I don't have a problem with starting out with a reasonable architect fee. I know that we got budget coming up, and I know that we can go over some of this. I don't know if we have to have, I would probably, for a reasonable set of plans drawn, I would probably go along with that today, because at some point you're going to need a fire station. But we don't have to decide where, and we don't have to decide exactly when at this meeting.
So
Between now and July 1st, we can talk some more about the finances and give you guys time to get some more figures on potential growth factors for New Bern and things like that, where we can feel a little more comfortable and not have to assume we got to raise taxes 7 cents or something. That we might figure out a way not to raise taxes,
Right.
or a way to mutual aid reciprocity with these volunteer groups.
Can we at least leave here with how the board feels on what an acceptable time is? Because that's going to be able to, determine, I
Time for
feel,
what?
for these times.
Yeah.
'Cause, that's
Below 8
the
or above
question
8,
that was
yeah.
asked. So,
I like all them figures, but I think them figures can be improved one way or the other, depending on other variables you can take in or take out of it. They're relevant. They are relevant.
I don't think anybody in this room wants to see somebody's house catch on fire and burn to
Well,
the ground.
I just don't like to be scared or.
Actually, I was complimenting you on that remark.
Well, I appreciate it. But I don't like to. Fire is a. I've seen fire. It's deadly. I hate to be around it. I understand and I can appreciate all more what you guys have done. But, you know, going back in my earlier years of being on board, it was all about that sacred ISO rating. And I appreciate and I'm proud of a 3. I'd like to see New Bern get a 2. But I don't like, you know, and I'm not saying you did it, but every time I ever mention something about trying to spend the taxpayers' money as wisely as could be spent, this ISO rating stuff would come up, which I think eventually won't even be around.
You may be right.
You know, but I don't want to see anybody's house burnt.
I know you don't. I agree with you.
I had 2 questions and I really didn't get a chance to answer. It came out,
I appreciate
one from you, from the mayor, one from
You
you,
might not take it.
Alderman Bingham. I had looked at that model and I had put some costs, but the one thing that will not work with that model is you can't put people in another department because then becomes where are they going to respond to? If Trentwood's call came in, and New Bern call came in at the exact same time, then which one do I go to?
Okay. You work at it?
If you really wanted to look at the part-time, which I did some data on that, put the part-times in the station, our station, and let them run out of our station rather than putting them in a
volunteer.
put them in a volunteer fire station, and then at night but if you go try to put, if we try to say we're going to put part-time people in West New Bern's fire station, then New Bern's call comes in and West New Bern calls at the same
And
time.
what's the hypothetical on that?
That I mean, there would hypothetically,
what's the
you got one
probability?
engine that's responding.
The higher probability would be they're on a call in West New Bern and then get a call
I mean,
in New Bern proper.
Well, I would like to think that the probabilities are rare, but it could happen, and I do understand, appreciate that, but.
I think if you're going to do part-time, it would, if that's the route that you
Are you
guys
talking
want to go.
part-time volunteer or part-time paid?
Hey,
Part-time paid guys, that's what you're
So
saying.
you're talking
You-
paid
what
versus
you're-
volunteer.
what the model he's talking about, the county or the city hires people for the daytime hours to augment staff, because that's where the problem is. And then the volunteers augment at night, but they're all volunteer fire stations already. I'm saying if
He's
we're
not
gonna
talking
do-
about putting paid staff in West New Bern's fire station. He's talking about putting paid staff in our fire station.
No, I think what the model
Right.
he's talking about.
It could be
putting
any, it is discussion other than these 4 things that there are several options. And they're not being discussed.
Well, I know
And I like to discuss everything for
the
them.
board approved 5 years ago, the board approved us to hire part-time firefighters.
You did pretty good on that
No.
too. I thought.
We never found one that would take the job. And I didn't even want to bring that up because I don't want you to say, well, you didn't try hard enough, you
You
know?
got the numbers.
But we didn't. We never found anybody that would take the job, and there's a bunch of reasons why. These firefighters, they work a 24-hour shift. They don't want to have to jump right down and do another one at a 10 or 8-hour shift with New Bern, and then tomorrow morning go back on another 24-hour shift. So, you know, if you can hire part-time firefighters, it works. It can work out great. But trying to hire those types of number of part-time firefighters in the Craven County area is going to be tough. Because you want to hire other firefighters because they've already got the certifications and they got everything they need.
What would be reasonable, Alderman Bingham, or Alderman Asher, about this architect fee, relevant
Well,
rate?
instead of doing that, instead of us asking to set the price, why don't we ask him to research it and bring it back and send it?
Because I don't,
Okay.
nothing, no more than that if we could
Why
find
can't we
somebody.
bid it out? Let's bid it
Yeah,
out.
that's what
You
we're
can't
saying.
bid out architectural fees.
Why can't
You can't bid them out, can you?
we? Why can't we?
Well,
Requirement, $50,000 or more, estimated $50,000 or more, we're required to bid it out. Many Brooks.
that's why I was saying 50 is
Oh,
to
okay.
keep it.
Oh, does it cost us to bid it out?
No.
No, we do it in, we
do
bid
it
it out
in-
in-house.
Well, I don't know if you can find somebody, yeah, put it on there, and then you come back and say, I can't find anybody, 50, we got
Well, what about
275.
asking to do it?
It's over
Ask
50,000.
ask the chief and the
Well,
research.
show of hands of who would be interested in a $50,000 architect study.
It's a start.
Yeah, it's a start.
just a
I feel
start.
like.
And then report back to us if you can't do it.
We haven't done it. And trust me, Alderman Bingham, you remember some of them things we studied and never did anything with.
No.
That's why
So,
it's
It's just a design, correct?
We're gonna be talking
Just a
about the
design
funds that
only.
we ain't using and spending money.
Well,
on.
enough to get us to a shovel-ready point that if we did, you know what I'm saying? Because if you have the design, you could do that. Well, once, I'm not talking about now. I'm not talking about now. In the next 2 to 3 years, because you're gonna have to, figure out the
So
location and everything. But at least you know that, I need this many square feet, it's gonna
what
look
about
like
the Thurman Road
this.
stuff? What are we gonna do?
Basically, what you're doing is buying a house plan, is what
Correct.
you're doing. You're contacting an architect to try to see if we can get a house plan,
Let's get the emphasis.
and that's all you're looking for.
I think we need to look at Thurman Road too, but that would be my vote, is to look at every opportunity, possibility, however you want to do it, to put some additional services out of Thurman Road.
I can
It's
answer.
not-
I think you can.
I don't know what anybody else thinks, but that's mine, so you can move along.
What was your thinking again? I'm
Is that we
sorry.
do everything possible to put additional services out at Thurman Road. I don't care if you get part-time people,
Well,
however you have to do it, but that's gonna be a mess when that construction starts. And
well, it's been
We need to
in the
protect
budget
those
for the
people.
past several years, and I think you ought to just put it back in the budget again,
see if
and
we can
we'll
afford it.
shake it out during budget time. But
We want some financial figures on 3 to 5 year projections of ad valorem tax base revenue that can offset the cost. You understand all that financial, what we want.
Yes, sir.
And all I'm trying to say here
To
is,
me,
I
unless I see
didn't,
the total picture.
well, I'm not, I have my strong feelings about the whole situation, as I'm sure the chiefs know, but I think it's very important that this board blend and be respectful. And I'm not gonna get everything I want, and probably Bobby's not gonna get everything he wants, but if we can kind of work together on this thing, we gotta do the right thing for the citizens, and that's all I'm trying to do by getting started on this architect stuff.
No, I agree.
Just be
I agree with
respectful and
that.
move forward.
it's the
I'm
first
fine
step.
with
We've got to do the first step before we can
And
take the
start
second step.
spending the money.
And then we can talk a lot more about it during budget time,
That's gonna be.
if that's agreeable with the board.
So is his direction then would be to put the requested personnel in next year, the upcoming budget, and we will continue this conversation at next year's
He could
budget.
possibly, with fund balance, I don't know if we've done a lot of pay-as-you-go in the last couple of years. That's totally something for you to report back to the board as soon as you want to, as to financially where we are and how bad it would hit us if we did it, and what it would affect our fund balance, et cetera.
Well, it's something like Thurman Road is not something you would want to utilize fund balance for, because that fund balance is one-time money, where you would be wanting to use recurring revenues like your ad valorem taxes and such like that. The fund balance will be utilized towards the $50,000, the architecture
Right.
fee, or the construction of the new station.
Correct.
So,
Is there anything, never mind.
Yeah, don't we have another,
Yeah, we do.
Sure.
Can we go back a bit?
Break and
I'm good.
I gotta go back.
you guys.
All we can do.
Just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
chief, appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, we might want to take a break for 5 minutes.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started here for the work session portion on the stormwater utility. The board's request, they want to just kind of come back with some information about where our stormwater utility is and maybe provide some insight as to if they want to make any changes. So kind of go back looking at our existing situation. We have a stormwater utility. Routine maintenance of existing stormwater system essentially is what they're charged with. When we formed the stormwater, when we formed the stormwater utility, it wasn't formed with specifically capital improvement needs or future needs or any of that stuff. It was really more of a maintenance only utility. So we have in our system about 4,000 plus catch basins, drop inlet, storm drain manholes, 55 miles or more of storm drain piping, 75 miles of major minor outfall ditches and swells. Our staff typically respond to specific customer complaints or concerns. Minor repairs are done, emergency repairs are also done within what we can afford in the budget. If we have something that's outside of that, we'll bring that to the board for their consideration. We also manage the stormwater permits and Neuse River Basin rules for the city of New Bern. We coordinate the permit reviews and approvals, any kind of on-site stormwater detention requirements for commercial developers or residential subdivisions. They're required to meet certain criteria now, and those permits have to come through. The city of New Bern handles those rather than allowing the state to do so. Perform as-built inspections for new constructions, perform yearly inspection of over 300 BMPs, BMPs are best management practices that is specific to stormwater detention and retention. Provide public education, investigate illegal discharges, and we also provide annual reports each year to the state on our status. Stormwater division staff, we have a stormwater superintendent, that's Avery. He's here, he's our leader of the stormwater division. We have a lead equipment operator 2, a lead equipment operator 1, an equipment operator, a senior maintenance worker, and then we have a temporary employee that we have for about 6 months of the year, primarily during the season when we have our largest growth during the summertime. Is that correct, Avery? They use mainly for because they have a lot of growth in the ditches at that time. And we utilize inmate labor with 3 individuals. I would imagine that fluctuates from time to time depending on their availability. Sometimes we don't get them, sometimes we do, but for the most part, the correction facility is pretty good about getting to us, and we utilize them as best we can. So our stormwater superintendent, this is Avery here. He manages the stormwater budget and the staff and their operations. He also works with our work order system that we have throughout Public Works to manage the requests that are put in place. He manages also our permits, the inspections that are required. That's the as-built and yearly inspections. Also provides public education, any kind of illegal discharges, meets with citizens, aldermen. Some of y'all may or may not have already had Avery out there with you, or Matt come out and work with you on some specific requests. And also coordinates work with some contractors. Obviously, our equipment operators do just that. They operate equipment, our large equipment, maintaining our ditches. Also, those that repair manholes, catch basins, drop inlets. We also have a rodding truck or vacuum truck where we utilize that to take care of specific backups or stoppages within our piping systems or in our catch basins. Our lead equipment operator 1 also is a licensed trapper for beaver, muskrats, and nutria. That keeps our wetlands free and problems of animals damming up storm basin areas or storm retention areas. I actually was at the Eastern Carolina Council Managers meeting about a week ago, I think it was, and one of the items that we discussed, to have somebody in from the county discussing their beaver control program, and the county only can manage so much, but in one specific little creek area, they removed and trapped over 150 beavers out of that particular area. So
was that the Bachelor's Creek area?
I think it was, yeah. Very bad area. I mean, it's and they can really cause a lot of inundation areas. And it's funny, we have a picture of one that this equipment operator in Avery caught that one day, and I think its fingernails was a nutria though, wasn't it? It was a nutria. The fingernails on that thing were as long as my index finger.
Wow.
That's how big it was. How much was it? About 75 pounds?
That was the biggest one we ever recorded.
Yeah.
And
we had some.
and you can't shoot nutria. I had a citizen call me because the police, he was in the back of his building.
Yeah.
And they had nutria, and he took his BB gun and shot it, and they called the police, and and the police wrote him citations.
There are a lot of state requirements as far as hunting and trapping of these, so it's nice to have somebody on staff. That's something we don't have to contract out, so it's a huge benefit to have this individual on our team.
I think it's in your ward, Mr. Odom. I'll go to Dr. Hagan. He needs to trap nutria. Got arrested.
Yeah,
can't do a big guy.
No. His office.
Senior maintenance workers, and our temporary staff and inmates, they're mainly used for our catch basin cleaning, draining outlets, clearing. They perform that routine maintenance each and every day, and we utilize the inmates to do the same. So our city is basically covered and split into 4 different zones when this was set up. The intent was that each one of these zones get every 4 months or every quarter of the year, 3 months, every 3 months, we return back to that zone. So the goal is for the back truck senior maintenance worker to stay in those zones and try to cover the entire city each year for routine maintenance at least 3 times. Cannot cover all 130 miles of pipes and ditches, 4,000 access points in 1 year. So we try to do that, and obviously they get pulled off jobs because of failure of a pipe over here, or something stopped over here, or a ditch line, the trees have fallen in, so they got to go remove trees out of a ditch line to free it up so that it flows. So we all the time are out checking and maintaining their major outfalls, some of the ones that, you know, have always been problematic, you know, Maggie Standy's place there at Red Robin Lane, and then you got the Fly Spot Shop. We've got several different drainage areas over there on the Jack Smith Creek Basin, and we have some issues down behind the mall there and over on North Hills. Is that North Hills? Is that correct? That we always have some flooding issues, so it's imperative that we keep those basins and those drainage ways clear. Our stormwater utility fee generates about $670,000 a year. I think whenever we set the utility up, Jordan, we were estimating about 700, so we hit it pretty close, I believe. Based on the equivalent residential unit, you'll hear us use the acronym ERU. That's 3,100 square feet. So whenever we were kind of doing our analysis of the impervious areas of a typical residential home, the average was about 3,100 square feet of impervious area. That'd be the rooftops and the driveways and stuff like that. So from that, you established a fee rate of what we estimated the cost was going to be for us to maintain a certain amount of staffing to be able to do this maintenance over a period of time, as well as their operational costs that they needed to perform the duties. We came up with a number of $2.10 per ERU, so our residents, that's $2.10 a month. That equates to $25.20 per year. For multifamily, it's a little bit less at $1.58 per month because of the density on that site. And for our commercial properties, they pay an equivalent residential unit based on that 3,100 square feet, equivalent to the size of what their impervious area is. So to kind of put that into perspective, if you had a 31,000 square foot commercial site of impervious area, that's equivalent to 10 ERUs, so their bill would be $21 a month. As you can see, the 120 ERU, it's capped at a maximum to up to $252 per month. That would be your Walmarts or your malls. Some of your larger entities like that would be what they would pay per month. So our stormwater fund, here's kind of a breakdown of our revenue expenditures. Revenue, as we've said, $670,000. Our expenditures, we're looking at, we have several different things. Jack Smith Creek Wetland Project was lumped in there at $64,122. That's the debt service to pay for that construction. The debt service for our vehicles and equipment at $26,299. Shared services, which is the shared services for personnel, HR, accounting, billing that we do, customer service, whatever, that's part of their shared service, IT, admin. So they would have to operate from that just like any other enterprise fund does. And our operating is $183,639. And I'll detail a little bit of that. So here's kind of a breakdown of what the majority of that goes to. Professional, medical, travel and training, uniforms, office supplies, utilities, vehicles, which is our vehicles, fuels, and maintenance is our big item, so that they can operate from day to day. We do have some money that we've set aside down in the red. This is $50,000 for our stormwater improvements, construction and repair supplies, around $25,000. So as you can see, we do budget some money for some specific improvements, but it's very limited. Just to kind of give you a perspective, one catch basin, if we have to replace that with the lid and everything else, it's probably going to cost us about $2,500. Is that a pretty good number? Yes. So one catch basin is $2,500, so you can kind of see how far that $50,000 is going to take you.
Gerald, when does the 64K roll off?
23, I believe.
23 is the last year, I believe we paid it.
2023.
Yes. Thank you.
So our current status, we have some difficulty maintaining all the culverts, pipes, ditches, and inlets. Oftentimes, you may hear a comment of constituents saying, well, they've never dug out my ditch or whatever, but oftentimes our staff go out, they inspect that particular ditch line. If the ditch line is free and clear to where it can flow, but still holding water, sometimes that's soil conditions, sometimes that may be grading conditions upstream, whatever it may be, but if it can free flow and maintain water, but maybe just be holding water, but not due to specific things that are blocking it, then we may flag that one to come back at a later time, because like I said, they're a little bit limited as to how much staff they have and how much work needs to be done, because you saw the number of 4,000 some basins, 130 miles of pipeline and ditches and stuff like that. So We do have failing infrastructure that throughout the city. Most of it's due to the age and the type of the material. We have a lot of old terracotta clay pipe that still exists in the city system. It doesn't take, after so many years, it doesn't take a whole lot of vibration or impact on those clay pipes to bust them. Jordan, with his experience in sewer, we have some sewer that's still on some terracotta clay pipes or whatever. And, you know, sometimes just milling a street and coming back and resurfacing it can create enough vibratory motion that it actually causes it to fail, and we have to go back and fix issues like that. So that's the reason why now we're doing a lot of the infrastructure repair and replacement stuff prior to us even resurfacing streets. We also have, you know, small projects since 2012. Staff has addressed the low-hanging fruit, if you want to call it that. We've had some issues. One of the drainage issues, I think, Alderman Best, you've mentioned before, over in the 1st and 2nd Avenue areas,
Yes.
Atmore Drive. One of the areas where we determined that we had some significant blockages was at the entrance to our own wastewater treatment plant. There's a double barrel pipe that would exist there that was undersized. We actually spent some money out of our funds, capital money, throughout. That was probably 2 or 3 years ago. I guess it was 3 years ago. We can actually come in and replace those pipes so that we could actually handle and drain more water out through that area whenever we did have flooding events or whatever they may be. Other projects have included some of our reactive repairs. Reactive repairs obviously are those where we get calls or we have problem areas or if we may have sinkholes or whatever it may be. We have a lot of sinkholes that form and occur over in the historic downtown area due to the age of the equipment and the failing of the infrastructure. So we really don't have, like I said, any current funding mechanisms. We do try to set aside some money, as I showed you in that previous slide, a little bit per year for some stormwater improvements, but you know, whenever you got catch basins that cost $2,500 a piece or whatever it may be, that money doesn't go very far because the utility was formed as a maintenance-only utility. So moving on to our FY18 stormwater improvements, the budget we had for that the board approved, it was funded with a loan that was taken out of our general fund, $1.52 million. So here's a list of where those specific drainage and stormwater improvements are going to happen. Cedar Street, News Boulevard, Elizabeth Avenue, Culver Crossing, Cardinal Drive, Johnson Street, Hancock Street, Middle Street, Spencer Avenue, King Street. A lot of those, you know, people have probably heard about the flooding over in the Frog Pond area. That's the area over close to where the police station's at. That's one of the ones that's included in this. All that ditch line and pipe work that leads all the way past Stanley White Recreation Center down towards where the Dutchfield Canal, where we've had a bunch of significant drainage problems before, all that stuff's being upsized and replaced with this project. So as you can see, this is addressing not necessarily the low-hanging fruit, but we're kind of starting to get up in the tree a little bit. We actually started stepping on a ladder and taking care of some of these stormwater issues. So I wouldn't say that we're, you know, at the tip top of the tree and having a repetitive maintenance program and a funding program for our actual stormwater improvements from year to year, but this is a methodology for where staff identified some needs, the board asked what we needed, we identified some projects, there's $1.5 million worth of projects, and they took that money out of the general fund through a loan that we'll pay over the next, how many years are you going to do it for?
Probably over 10.
10, okay. So for the next 10 years, we'll pay that through a debt service.
And earlier, can I just, a loan from the general fund? So did you borrow the money from someplace, or you took the money out of the general fund?
No, the intent is to actually borrow the money from the bank through an IP line, and the general fund will repay that back.
Yeah.
We'll repay the loan.
The loan was taken out with general fund money. It will be with a bank.
It will be repaid with general fund.
Yes, that's correct.
Basically.
Okay. Just sounded funny, a loan taken from the general fund.
I'm sorry, yeah, my wording on that.
Earlier this week, I sent all of you as well detailed information on these projects. So that was in a PDF that Matt had put together if you have any questions about what those are.
Let me ask you a question. So the Cedar Street improvement, that's the one that's going to cover that canal that's Dutchfield?
It's mainly the portion from Stanley White. Once it turns into the open channel canal area, we're not really doing a whole lot with that I'm aware of. It's really the piping network that leads from basically Stanley White Recreation Center all the way up to where the police station's at.
And
So
you got
anywhere
the
that
canal that goes by Miss Mary Randolph's house.
Bless
we're
your
not
heart.
touching her canal that goes by her house.
When's the last time that canal been cleaned?
All,
We have to be careful with when we do that because some of that stuff is considered to be protected wetlands area. We can't just go and dig it out, we'd be breaking the law.
The
Yeah.
canal? Passing by this, that
Yeah, that's a
canal is
natural blue
wetland?
line
it's
stream.
the blue line stream you get,
Okay.
yeah, you get in
You
trouble.
can, you disturb the soils, you actually are breaking the laws. When you disturb the soil base of those.
Going through a residential area is considered a
Yeah,
wetland?
it was there, it pre-existed our residents, everything in there, so it's a blue line stream.
Protected.
Blue line streams are considered to kind of wetlands as well.
Okay.
Why don't you explain what a blue line stream means?
Blue line stream means it's been identified on, by the USGS and the Army Corps of Engineers as a stream that typically stays wet all the time.
And it does, it's river, it's really, the river actually dictates how much water is in the canal at any given time. It may be 2 inches in there, which it is probably right now, because the wind today is 2 inches today, and tomorrow it'll be a foot in there.
So is that the same canal that goes all the way back around to Jack Creek Smith Bridge?
Yes, ma'am, it passes under the train track and goes right up to Jack Creek.
Okay. So within that area, Jack Creek Smith, is there any improvements gonna be starting anytime soon for that area? Right down about where you come around the curve in National Cemetery, you're coming around that curve, and then there's a bridge, and there's a new.
Oh, yes, ma'am, they got a paving project where they're gonna raise the road.
So,
Yeah, we're raising the road there to fix it.
Were you on that project with us on the bus that time? Did you come over
Me?
with us?
No, I was not.
Okay.
No,
So
that's why
during the
I asked
campaign,
why
they were
go on
taking
bus.
around, yeah.
That's why I wanted to know when it was,
Yeah,
so
but that's a major problem where the water comes from the river.
right, and I see that sometimes there's just a stake out there where that water's like 4 or 5 feet high. So how are y'all gonna, a bridge is gonna come across there?
They're actually gonna raise
Gonna
the
wedge.
elevation to the bridge. The bridge never gets inundated by water, so they're gonna try to raise the road up high enough to
Okay.
where it'll stay above that mean water level during a storm. So you shouldn't have 2 feet of water on the road anymore.
So that's something that's in process already now with the,
That should be coming up this spring.
That's in our current paving project,
Okay.
and that will be finished up within the next
Spring or something.
2 months.
so when you say paving, you're saying bridge as well?
No, we're not building a bridge.
Okay, so what do you mean by bridge then?
We're raising the road to
Raising.
meet the
Yeah,
bridge.
the bridge
Okay,
is
all right,
elevation.
okay.
On both
All right.
sides. I call it wedging the road, is what we're
Okay.
doing. We're gonna wedge up like, so right now what happens is you got the bridge that sits here, you got the road that comes down, then it ramps up and goes over the bridge and then kind of comes back down. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take out that dip. That's where the flooding occurs. So what's gonna happen is we're gonna wedge all the asphalt in so that it's level with the bridge and then it goes back more at a level rate and meets back somewhere close to where the National Cemetery curve is.
And you said that's beginning the spring?
It's under contract now. The contractor is working on days that are, the weather's available on George Street and Oaks Road. Those were the last 2 of the $2.7 million paving project.
Thank God.
We did, however, find out that they shut down their plant for 3 weeks of March.
So I can go back
that's
to
gonna-
my constituents over there and let them know, because that's all I've been getting, calls on that. Okay, well, thank you.
So what are some of our identified current issues? Infrastructure obviously is another one. Stuff ages. As we're continuing to move up the tree on the fruit of the tree. Roanoke Avenue, East Rose Street, Tatum Drive, Mercy Clinic, Spencer Avenue, drainage issues there, Bryce Creek subdivision, Innisbrook Lane, Coriander. Those are just some of these areas we've identified. One of the things too that we've got to keep in mind is we do have we have pump stations in certain areas. Greenbrier is one of them that we have several different stormwater pumping stations. At some point or another, we're going to have to replace those pump stations, the pumps within those pump stations, and usually we have to change out the control boxes that go along with it. So that's something that we've identified. That Clubhouse Drive and Pine Valley Drive, those are 2 that we have, both of those being in Greenbrier. Drainage, also North First Avenue, Goldsboro Street, Racetrack Road, those are some areas that staff have identified as some current issues that need to be addressed. Obviously, as funding allows us to do so, we will do that, either through our limited amount of funds we have operationally from year to year, or through something the board may pass as an additional stormwater improvement project. Financial options, so we continue to seek approval for long-term loans. we can say this, who knows, I don't know whether it's true or not, but they did say very clearly whenever we went, the mayor and I called the LGC, and they basically said that, you know, we'll do it this time, but they may do it again, who knows, but they kind of indicated as if this is uncommon and they may not do it again, where we could get a loan through the general fund to do it, but we can always, it's always no unless you ask, so. We have to identify where the budget debt service payment on this year's $1.5 million project, that's one of the questions that we've got to decide. I think that's kind of understood that we're going to take it through the general fund is what the intent of the board was. That's the reason why they took the money there. So we will try to identify that. Seek approval to move Jack Smith Creek debt to the general fund, something that we could look at. You know, there's been some discussions of that in the past. The board's never gotten really direction to do so, but Jack Smith Creek, that's 5,000, 64,000. So I mean, that's something that could be taken out of there to free up a little money for some additional project. Move stormwater back to the general fund to allow subsidized operations. We could potentially do that. Some of the questions that have been raised in the past is, you know, we implemented a $2.10 stormwater fee, but when we did that, I know there was the question of, you know, we made a $2.10 ERU, and we didn't lower any kind of tax rates available, so technically is that considered to be a tax increase? But keep in mind that we did also eliminate the permit fees for all these people that had the BMPs, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and that was a pretty good sum of money that helped out with some revenue issues. I don't remember what the dollar number was.
About $400 a unit, wasn't it? You were contracting that out.
Right, we were contracting that out. That was the inspections too, which we were contracting out, which we eliminated and brought that in-house. That was costing.
Mark, you got about, I know that when we had our retreat, we identified about $4 million total needs. And so is that the 2.5 right there? In addition to the 1.5 we approved at the retreat last year, is that a total of 2.5 there?
This up here?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's all of the 2.5 or not. Do you know, Chrissy?
I don't, I'd have to look at that.
I just wonder, like that Bryce's Creek subdivision, how old is that? 15 years at the most? And, I mean, it's just not something that's not right that we're going to be doing capital improvements to something that the board approved a development, and either the conditions were marginal or some engineer missed something, and now the taxpayers are new are going to be paying to fix something that 50, 75 years up the road, yeah, they ought to fix, but I mean 15 years into something and we're already having to redo something.
The issues there specifically.
Where is Bryce's Creek?
I don't know if it's talking about Bryce's Crossing or Lonely Pines.
Oh, the Bryce's Crossing.
I don't know if it's Lonely Pines or Bryce's Crossing or Hardy Farms or which one is it?
Bryce's Crossing is outside.
I know you got that flood condition on Old Airport Road. Is that what that is?
That is a different issue because that, until recently, it fell on the county. Now, I guess, I don't know the whole details about that, but the Bryce's Crossing issue is where we've noticed infrastructure that has fallen on us now was not installed properly. I hate to say it, it was bad 3 days all of us.
Is there any, when we accepted it, do we have any, like, you know?
Well, we got the same problem over in John Reed's there. We've got another engineering deal.
That's it. This is the important thing here is when we approve stuff and contractors come in and build this stuff, it's really imperative that we have people out there inspecting the installation and as it's going in so that you know you're getting something. Otherwise, you don't know what you're getting once it's under the ground.
Absolutely. Do we
have those issues
At this point, we do. We have a gentleman that's our site supervisor, and also you got me now compared to when Bryce's Crossing was built. We don't know. I don't know. I can't answer that question at that point because that's before my time.
I'm just trying to keep that from happening 20 years ago for another board that you got some development's going to go in a year from now that 15 years later you're going to have to be spending money on it.
And it's also very important that we have good construction standards, which the board has to approve, and we appreciate y'all doing that. But if you have good construction standards and you have people out there inspecting the construction as it's going in, you start eliminating some of these issues 5, 10, 15 years down the road whenever you've got a brand new subdivision.
JR, how long would they probably allow us to finance a stormwater project? 20?
It's not necessarily a question of how long the LGC will, it's a question of how long I can get a loan for it. Currently, the banks, or most recent discussions I've had with banks is they're not really going out 15 years, they're pushing more for 10. So, and it just depends, I could probably get one out for 20 max, but it just depends, like I said, it's more depending on what I get from the bank and what I get from the LGC.
I would just make a suggestion. This is something that's been around for years. It's got to be fixed. What I would like to see is almost like a reverse engineering from a financial standpoint. Find out how much money we can borrow, how long we can borrow it out, what that annual debt service would be. Take that away from our current budget, because obviously if we fix a lot of these problems through a capital, fix, and you're not going to have all this operating and maintenance budget. Let's figure out how much we can borrow. If it's $4 million and we can get it for 20 years, that's less than $300,000 annual debt service. And then take that away from your $670,000 and try to do this to where we can actually fix some problems instead of you just basically like a dog chasing your tail around town trying to fix things little by little, but you're going to have less operating to work with. That's what I would like to see, and let's get it done.
I would agree with that. I have a question though for you, and I'm not really, I need the details, but what's the deal with the bond issue? I mean, if we wanted to lump all this in a bond issue, and I mean, it looks like we have so many capital infrastructure needs with stormwater. I mean, and I remember years ago, Mayor, the city department wanted to float that, and I don't know how much.
Well, when it went from about 3 items to 12, that's when it couldn't happen, and the board would have to decide on like
understood, but
couple things.
Would that help us in borrowing more money and getting? I'm not sure how a bond works. I'm going to be honest with you.
Well, bond essentially, there's two different bonds that I can think of that you might do with this. Is one being a revenue bond because you have a stormwater utility, but to do a revenue bond, that means you're adjusting the rate accordingly. The other option would be is you do a general obligation bond, but the general obligation bond raises what the tax rate is to pay for special projects that you identify. Essentially, the public is voting on the self-imposed tax to do stormwater improvements or whatever else you want to lump through a GO bond. If you do a revenue bond, I don't think necessarily the revenue bonds necessarily they may require a public hearing, but they don't require a public vote. So the board can choose to do a revenue bond, but essentially you're doing nothing more than increasing the rate to do that. So if you're going to do that, you might as well raise the rate.
What I just said,
when they had that bond, wasn't it? GO bond,
Well,
and there was
the
no
problem
increase in
is our
taxes?
operating cost is only a very small
that
portion.
was the thought.
The personnel
no
services is the big portion of that.
Hopefully it'll
How
work.
many people do we have?
Of course, that was with
7, that's in counting.
So you have 7, so if you're fixing the problem of what he's out doing, you have to have 7.
Still got to maintain it.
That's what I was going
7's inmates.
One of the biggest things that people want to see is they want to see that physical presence, and we get rid of what we got. We really hardly have enough to show the physical presence as it is.
Most of these projects that we're showing there is all infrastructure, like pipe. The work they're doing is mucking and digging ditches and cutting the trees out of the ditches and all that stuff. That's what they do. All that work, that $1.5 million worth of work that your board approved, that's all contractual pipe, mostly any of that kind of stuff. Everything that they're doing is more rotting our existing pipes that we have, and also digging out these ditches.
Well, my 1/7 of the vote's going to be if you're going to have to raise the fee to do this, then I would want it done to a GO bond for the public to vote on.
Said lump sum and get it done. I mean, our infrastructure's failing in so many places that, I mean, it seems like you're Band-Aiding one place and then running to the other, trying to fix that. And,
In the time that I've been doing this, we've also noticed that it's just if we add impervious, we're going to have the point where the system is like a funnel. It's not going to take any more water. It's going to come out the top, and we having that issue in neighborhoods already. So if we keep growing, we're going to have to fix this eventually anyway. So
and that kind of goes back to the point the mayor's made for several years now of our construction standards to take into account whether we're requiring certain criteria to be met, whether that's a 10-year, 25-year, 50-year storm, 35-year, whatever that storm is. Engineers can design based on. We're not going to be able to design for every single storm because we're a hurricane-prone area, but we ought to be able to design and upsize lines, or whether we pay for the upsizing of the lines to meet certain standards. That's things that the board needs to consider and give staff some direction on of how we want to do that. Whether we incorporate it in our design standards based on subdivision whenever they build them, or whether we actually pay money, set aside some money and pay money to upsize lines whenever subdivisions get done so that we can have adequate infrastructure in place, because that's a prime example of what happens.
You can't require the developer to put in whatever size line Jordan says is needed for future growth.
You set the standard, so let's say, like DOT has standards where they say side ditches, like driveway tiles for side ditches, have to meet a 10-year storm requirement. Anything that crosses underneath the road of DOT's road requires a 25-year storm. So if we want to have some criteria set in our standards that is above and beyond the 25-year storm, we can do that. But you're going to have to dictate that and tell us that that's what you want. We can set it in our standards.
And how bad are the developers going to fuss about that?
I'm sure.
I mean, is
like
it
every other
going to be
thing,
that kind of a burden about like cul-de-sacs?
I mean, that's cost to them. That's exactly the same. No different.
But it's cost to the taxpayers if they don't do it.
But they don't care about that.
I know, but we do.
That's what you got over that Bryce's Creek, that
I know.
Bryce's Creek.
And I got a question to ask either of you three down there. On Airport Road, there at Bryce's Crossing, does that ditch have the pile of dirt in the middle of it by design?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a John Hardy issue. If I need to take one, I will.
You said enough. Problem.
Don't go there.
Let's discuss that one offline.
Later on then,
Yes.
okay.
If I might, and it seems to be a desire for a geo bond. If we do that, if you all want to proceed with the geo bond this year, we need to know, we have to know that today, because that's an 11-month process, and the election that would be voted on will be in November, and we're already in February. So if you guys want to give us, I would appreciate getting that direction today.
A little bit more, so the people are going to dictate what we're going to do with the money.
Essentially what you're doing is, as a board, you are collectively agreeing that we have a problem. We want to know how the public wants to pay for it, is what you're asking them. Or is the public willing to self-impose more tax upon themselves so that they can take care of stormwater issues and do?
Oh, okay.
That has to be, because I've seen where some of these bonds where you get no tax increase and they still float a bond. Is that?
That can happen.
Okay.
You're basically what you're doing on a geo bond, pledging the full faith and credit of the city.
Correct.
So if you have the revenues already to cover it, you don't have to raise taxes. If you don't have the revenues to cover it, you have to raise taxes in order to make sure that you cover your debt service.
Well, I kind of like the idea that Alderman Odom suggested too, that see what we can get over, how much money we can get over 20 years.
Well, I think what we said before on this, if you do a geo bond for stormwater, we've got a stormwater fund, so essentially it's not going to change the tax, it's going to dictate what the stormwater fee is going to be. Instead of $2.10, it may take it to $5, if that's what
it ends up, yeah. But we can try to stretch out those loans as long as we can, like you guys.
Well, you're a riverboat gambler on the fact that the voters are going to vote it in. If they don't, you're still at $2.10.
It all depends on if they have a drainage issue or not. If they don't have any drainage.
I wouldn't bet you that it would pass myself. You got like the new development is set at 31,000 is the max it can be, and that's 300,000 square feet or better of space. So it's really only paying a 10% of what another commercial site could pay. But even though it treats its own water in an event, it's got a natural canal right there, a blue line stream. So another development won't be the same, but again, that's a little inequitable itself, the way it's structured. But again, the reason it's structured that way is you definitely would not pass a revenue bond if you did commercial to the extent of what it ought to be paying, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That would be a very unpopular thing.
Alderman Odom, what you suggested the first time around where you said, get what we need, borrow the money, and let's just pay it over 20 years. Would that be paid out of general fund, or would that be paid out of
It'd have to be paid out of
stormwater?
this, but my suggestion was to keep from raising the stormwater fee.
Yes.
Is to fix these problems and cut the operating costs down, but they're saying that they wouldn't be able to do that.
Wow.
I'll give you a good example. This year, they got the fund for improvements was $50,000. Within the first month of the new budget, I spent $62,000 on emergency repairs. That 50 stormwater improvement, I ended up having to do it on repairs, 2 major repairs that were failing infrastructure that had to be fixed or was flooding whole neighborhoods. And it's things like that. If we do, we can't work off of that. We fix a lot of the infrastructure. Yes, we can maybe get rid of the 50,000, but we still need all that other money too.
But what happened is historically, up till this thing got established, it would have been a public works general fund expense.
Right.
And now all of a sudden, it's a stormwater variable kind of expense instead of, and that's what happened.
Alderman, that's why we have that little history. In 2011, we were tasked, I say we, myself and Mr. Montaigne were tasked by the city manager at the time to look at all the stormwater problems and complaints that were coming out of the community. A lot of it stemmed after Hurricane Irene in 2011, and try to find a list of projects where we could do just this. Find out, guys, find out what do we need to do, where the pipes need to be fixed, and how much money do we need to fix all these drainage problems. So we embarked on about an 18-month-long process of spending every time it rained more than an inch, we were out there in waders and in the ditches, day, night, weekends, didn't matter, to try to gain the data, figure out the problems. And what we found over the 18 months, we were prepared to bring a list to the board just like this. Hey, here's the 15 problems we need to fix. Here's the cost to do each one of these. Here's the money we need. What we found was about 80% of the problems weren't, we've got a collapsed pipe or we've got a pipe that's too small. 80% of the problems were, we've got infrastructure, that, when I say infrastructure, I mean ditches and canals and pipes and everything that hasn't been maintained since it's been installed. Some of that's in excess of 100 years, but none of it's been maintained. While we have historically done some work out of the public works for stormwater maintenance, it's very reactionary what we found, and almost always just on an emergency basis. So nothing was getting done unless it was, the pipe is collapsed, there's a hole in the street, we go fix the pipe. Because there was no dedicated funding to maintain the stormwater infrastructure, it was having to pull money out of the same pool that we were paying firefighters, we're fixing potholes, buying police cars, and you know it's a very competitive fund of money. So unfortunately, prior to 2012, there really was no routine maintenance of stormwater infrastructure, period.
Jordan, didn't you say as well that some of the ditches and pipes were full of sediment?
Absolutely. I mean, we found a lot of places where you'd have a 24-inch pipe that you couldn't get that cut through because of it had been completely filled up with sedimentation and dirt. And the same things would happen to your water and sewer systems if we didn't have dedicated staff that were out there maintaining those things every day. So that type of infrastructure, it's out of sight, it's out of mind. A lot of it's underground. You don't see it every day. It's not like a pothole that jumps out at your attention. So it's easy to get forgotten about. So the point of saying all of that is, while doing all of this is great, and there's a lot of infrastructure repairs that need to happen, I think what Matt is trying to point out in this PowerPoint is there's also a need going forward for more funding in the routine maintenance. I think that's what Avery is highlighting here. They can't get around every year and even maintain what the stuff that they need to maintain. So I think you really got two separate kind of buckets you've got to look at there. Your one-time capital expenses to fix the pipe, to fix something's broke, and maybe increase the size of this pipe, and then you've got your routine maintenance and stuff you need to be doing every day. And if you're not doing that every day, you're really going backwards.
How much of the problem is just routine maintenance? I mean, would you say it's 20% of our issues, 30% of our issues? You know, need ditches cleaned out that we just haven't been able to get to.
I feel like it's probably a 50-50 roundup. So we got 50% over here is poor infrastructure, and 50% is the lack of maintenance. And now we're trying to catch up with years before we even got where we incepted. We got 25 years of maintenance to catch up with. That's not happening with 6 people. Mm-hmm. And then as we maintain, as you find a system that's new or a new part of a system that you didn't know existed, and you start to clean it and maintain it, you, in a sense, sometimes find more issues of infrastructure that need to be repaired, which is a good thing because now we can catch it before it gets bad or before it sucks in the street or a car or something like that. So it's like I said, it's 50-50 toss-up. I think that we need to improve both of them, most definitely. More people to do, and you know, it's the routine of getting the back truck around in the zones every month and getting guys out there to clear ditch lines and so people can see that we are trying to do something and not, because we react so much, sometimes we do get out of the zone, and nobody sees us and they say, well, you don't ever come to my house, or you never come to my neighborhood, and it's not really true. We try our best. We just don't have enough people.
7 people for the whole city of New Bern?
That's, yeah, and I did a calculation with that.
7, but that's two, 3 of them are inmates.
3, yeah, 3,
Wow.
no, it's 7.
That's-
Yeah.
So you're at 7 total now?
Do inmates get paid?
No.
Yeah, they do.
$1
$1 a day.
And that's another thing too, that that's just for FYI, you're not gonna get the quality of work out of an inmate that you get out of an unemployed, because they don't wanna be here.
Now, do we have inmates that do the, cutting the grass and stuff? Well, we need to put the inmates cutting the grasses and deal with the quality of that, and take the employees that we have that do cut the grass and put them over here to help this brother out for 7 people. I mean, seriously, because this is important. We gotta figure this one out, because I don't want to be
That's what
driving down the
people
street and
yell at us
you
the most
suck down
about,
my
right?
car.
Is their flooding situation.
So just kind of moving on here, distribution of the stormwater utility fees in North Carolina, just so you can kind of see where we are in comparison with everybody else. The New Bern's $2.10 per 3,100 square feet, as we said, that they use an equivalent impervious area statewide of $24.55. So that equates to $1.66 for New Bern if you want to compare apples to apples. So if you see where we are, we're in the $1 to $1.99 range. As you can see, most of the others, they range anywhere from $2 to $5. The majority of those entities are ones that are funding both the maintenance and improvement projects as well. So as you can see here, here's a comparison. Y'all talk about benchmark cities. So here's Wilson, Washington, Kinston, Wilmington, and Greenville. Kind of see where we are. We do have, like I said, a little bit more stringent requirements here because of the News River and the Phase 2 rules. So as you can see, we are the lowest of all of our benchmark cities that we're showing here.
So all of these cities have a separate fee and don't include it in their taxes, correct? These fees are separate.
That's correct.
So why are we charging our commercial customers the same as our resident customers?
We don't.
We don't.
We charge them based on an equivalent residential unit. So the equivalent residential unit, the average was 3,100 square feet of impervious area. So if they have 31,000 square feet as a commercial entity, then we charge them 10 times the rate, which is $21 a month.
Now, what's the maximum a commercial property can use?
$250
$252.
Per property.
per property.
Okay, because I had someone to tell me that he was paying over $500 a month on a couple of his properties.
That may be the case.
But
She's
I
got a
know
couple
who told you
properties.
that too.
Huh?
But I know who told you that too.
Out on Highway 55 area.
Well, that would be true, because
So-
it's per property.
So our stormwater utility fee, so increasing the stormwater utility fee, if you were to consider that, could generate additional revenue that could satisfy 2 needs. First, funds could generate additional revenue for the improvement projects and possibly additional staff for the maintenance portion of it. Second, the funds could also begin to put in a capital reserve for any future needs. So this is something, like I said, we're not proposing this. This is the board's decision entirely, but this was what we presented to the board at our I think this was at our budget retreat, if I'm not mistaken, last February. So we just kind of kept this slide and showed it in here. So equivalent 210, that shows you where we are now to add rates. If you were to go up to 354, that's what the budget would be, and that's how much additional revenue it would generate depending on what you chose as a board to enact.
Hickory, let me ask you, excuse me. When I was department head, we used to call him Hickory. Mark, I apologize for that. Mark, God, I forgot what I was going to ask now. This fee can only be used for maintenance, is that correct? This fee that we're charging, this money, can we use it to put in new pipes?
The fee you can use to do anything with. Right now, we're using it for personnel and operational costs associated with us to get our staff out there, muck out, do ditches, minor repairs. That's what we use it for.
Jeff, what were you trying to? Am I on something wrong?
You can use that. Correct me if I'm wrong. You can use that money for capital or operating or maintenance.
but right now, 210 only generates enough for maintenance.
That's right.
Okay.
You can
The
use it for whatever.
the
but it
board
only
instructed us.
So I thought I heard you say one time, or someone told me one time, we'd be better off doing away with this fund and just you put the money in the general fund so we could use it wherever we wanted to use it.
Well,
You can't do that. Legally, you can't do that.
No, you can,
Yeah, you
you
can
can
do
abolish
that.
this fund.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can abolish the fund, yes, but you can't continue to charge the stormwater fee and just use the stormwater money.
Oh,
for
I
whatever you
understand,
want.
we would use it, but
What I was mentioning, Bobby, is we're only restricted to use that $670,000 for stormwater. We can't go to the general fund, when this used to be paid out of public works, you can't go to the general fund and say, we want to do $1 million project. We had to
okay.
get special
So we
approval
can't move money out of the general fund into that $670,000 fund.
Right.
without approval from the
Enterprise,
LGC.
enterprise fund.
Okay.
So if we
So
do,
I'm sorry, let me ask one more question. So should we keep it like it is? Is it staff's recommendation to keep it like it is, or is it staff's recommendation to abolish it and?
So where are you gonna get the 670,000 from?
No, I'm not talking about the money, I'm just talking about the fund, the enterprise
You
fund.
can't do that.
No, you need to keep the fund like it is.
Yeah, you
If
can't do that.
The stormwater fee is
One way or
only
the
used for
other.
stormwater purposes, so in order to make sure that the stormwater fee is only used for stormwater purposes, it's better to keep it in its own separate fund like
Okay.
this.
You can't charge them $2.10 and put it in the general fund.
Going back, kind of what Jordan said, from a historical perspective, it used to be in public works. The problem is whenever the revenues are bad and you're having bad financial situations, that money was being spent for other things, and that's the reason why stuff got neglected for years and years and years and wasn't maintained the way it should have, and that's the reason why they're dealing with the problems they are now. So what they wanted to do was take the utility, form the utility so you had dedicated money that had to go towards stormwater, period.
Okay.
so are we able to, go to a bank and ask them for as much as we can get and do what we do, and then, take some of that money and implement it towards the budget of operating costs over a period of time, and, and then we get over that bridge on the next time we have to look at,
So what I understand you saying, and so I would know, is you're talking about borrowing some money, finance it through, like Jeff said, through a 20 years, and taking that $670,000 and use to pay that back. You're not?
You're saying to split some, do your capital improvements, but take a bit of that and put it to more operating costs.
right, but make it the amount of money that it's gonna benefit over a period of time,
Gotcha.
so that it's already budgeted, we already have it set aside, so that if
So
you
we
need
kind of like
to.
tucking into another account.
Exactly. And then you have, if you don't use it, or it's not used, can't you transfer it back in?
Is staff really saying that unless you raise the stormwater rate that's currently 210, you don't have any more money to do anything other than what we're doing right now? Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
So whether it's more operating to clean more ditches out, or whether it's to fix some more infrastructure, either way, you're going to have to raise that rate.
But if we did
Or if you want to, I don't want to, whatever, this is the board's decision. If the board gives us direction, then it's our job to carry it out. But if the board wants to reduce the amount of staff we have towards maintenance and apply that towards capital projects, then that's what we've got to do. That's whatever y'all's direction is how we carry it out.
If we wanted to
Maintenance
do
will be right
both,
back in the mid,
Then-
that's where we're at.
You're right. It's
I've been there.
if we wanted to do both, meaning, because we want to be able to have the funds to take care of the infrastructure, kind of like a one and done situation over maybe 20, 30 years, right? We're fixing them, so, right? If we want to borrow all this money to do the infrastructure, we want to fix the infrastructure so that we don't continue to have these issues, right? Okay, so if we were to do that idea of what Mr. Odom was saying, we would have to raise ad valorem tax? No tax.
It's gotta come from there.
If you want to take
Okay.
money beyond if you want to do stuff beyond what we're doing now, and you want to say, you know what, we want you to do what you're doing now with regards to maintenance, and we want you to do a little more towards capital projects, then if you're talking about raising the fee and keeping the maintenance stuff the same, if you were to go up 90 cents, let's pick the $3 one. If you were to go up $3, that's going to generate $294,000 worth of money that we could use towards capital projects per year.
When was the last time the rates have gone?
They never have since we implemented it. which was in 2000.
Okay, so the
Well,
next
Right.
question is, because I don't,
Understand
so explain to me, if we borrow the money over the 20 years, and we borrow, it costs us $2 million to do whatever we need to do to fix it all. That money could be borrowed, but it has to be paid from the $2.10. So we still, and that debt service
Unless you-
would eat it all up, right? So you can't do that.
I'll make
And
a
you take it from
suggestion
somewhere else.
here. My suggestion is this. I don't think this board, or in the 300 years of New Bern, any board has ever gone in and hired professional folks that somewhere in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, that know how to clean a ditch out. You identify the stressed areas of not lateral, but the main artery ditches, like let's say from Trent Village on Trent Road. You know how that one is. Now, what I know about clean water is as long as you don't take new dirt out of the ditch, you can clean silt infiltration and things like that. Bearing concern for erosion factors of disturbing that ditch, and that's one reason we don't clean them out. But my thought would be this, is to do a one-time possible rate increase for like 1 year. Now, I know that when you propose these things, that automatically means that forever the rate never comes back down. But if you, for instance, for 1 year, just like when they used to do in the old days with the nuclear power plants and things like that, you would do a rider, or you would increase for temporary purposes the fee. If you temporarily increase that fee 90 cents for 1 year and got $300,000, you then hire these experts to come in and know how to clean the ditch out. And you get them in, get them out. You don't pay entitlements. I mean, you don't pay all these extra fees. You get, in addition to the capital improvements of $1.5 million done, we buy ourselves 2 or 3 years. We look back, reevaluate the whole situation with drainage in New Bern, and we quit undersizing these pipes. Now, right now, the other day, I had to, because I'm obligated by my office. I had to approve something in New Bern because the way we have our policy now, some things can be automatically approved without going through the Board of Aldermen. Is that not correct?
What are you talking about?
Subdivision design.
Well, what I'm talking about is that I have nothing, you know, I saw something that I thought was undersized, but I would be a violation of my office not to sign it, even though it's probably undersized.
Well,
And it's
wasn't
gonna be
it,
when
do
the-
we not have standards to say what?
No, we don't.
Oh.
No, we don't, for the fact that when a pipe is 18 inches by some engineer and it needs to be 3 foot for 35 years from now, I'd like to be able to say, I sign it and put it over to the side,
But you're
change the pipe to
responsible.
3 feet. But I'm not allowed to do that. So I have to sign it. So again, quit undersizing pipes, do a one-time 90-cent increase, get the $300,000, hire some people that really know how to clean these big artery ditches out, and move on with those capital improvements and go back to $2.10, and we'll be in good shape.
How much can we get done with $300,000?
Well, see, we don't know that, because we've never looked at doing that.
I understand, but then again, you go back to borrowing the money, how much is that gonna cost us, where are we gonna get that money? I mean, that's the issue there too.
The other
We need to
thing,
get this fixed, this is ridiculous, I'd rather go to a GO bond, I'd rather do something, let's lump it all together, we've neglected, not we collectively, but over the years, it's been neglected, we need to get this infrastructure.
So why not take it up to $4 for a year?
I don't want to take it up, I don't want to take up a dime myself, but I hear you
Then you telling me
we're
that's
talking
gonna cost
compromising in
us
this board.
$10.80
But I'm just saying that
annually?
we take it up to $4
And see,
You
you have
have
monthly,
a
90, and
culture.
then
to
annual.
get these
So
problems.
I got my
Culture
1080.
citizenry
I
on
don't,
that.
A year,
Very-
a year.
but he said 1
Yeah,
year.
but
So
then,
for that
but
1
then it's
year,
like, okay,
everyone
so
in the city, everywhere is gonna pay
one problem
$10.80.
for you, so, you know.
He's saying 90 cents.
Duh, on the 90 cent,
That's your annual, and you
you're only
go
gonna
back.
get $10.80 for each
Yeah.
person. If I'm gonna raise,
For each
let me get $34.80, and then we're gonna raise, drop it back down for the year. Go to the max.
So what, I mean,
$34.80.
it's a thing of, do you want
I buy Michael Kors for
water
$90.
problems under
I mean,
control?
we got
You're paying
$34.80.
this for a year, this is just for a year.
Right, if
Get all
we
these
did it
problems
this
under
way.
control.
All right, moderator, bring us back to order. I've been out of order, go ahead.
No, you're
No,
I
not.
like that idea.
Can I
Don't
make,
borrow
ask
it.
a question?
Borrow the
I
money.
say
Does-
borrow it and do it,
can I-
I'm with you
can I-
there too.
I kind of like that idea too. But I want to ask you a question. Is it staff's recommendation that we look at adopting somewhat the same policies as the Department of Transportation has to make sure that this undersizing piping doesn't occur in the future?
They love you to
Our
undersize.
current, our
They
current
won't-
policies exceed the Department of Transportation standards.
Okay, so,
Okay, how long has that current policy been in effect? Since Bryce's Crossing?
No, Bryce's Crossing predates anything we've done.
Okay.
5 or 6 years maybe at the most.
So
Well,
the
policy.
future issues then are resolved with your policy?
Loaded question. Alderman. And I'll give you a blanket statement. You're never going to fix all the flooding problems in Newbern. I'll tell you that with all
We're
certainty.
flat.
It's very flat. You've got very low energy to move water from point A to point B. We're in a coastal area. We get a lot of rain. And if we could throw all the money in the world at this, you're going to have flooding to some degree. I could take places where pipes cross the street, take the pipe completely out, and make a 20-foot by 20-foot hole through the middle of the street. You're still going to have flooding in some places. So just making bigger pipes is not going to solve all of the problems. That's one of the things me and Matt determined with a lot of evaluation, a lot of research looking at it. What we have done in the design standard has exceeded what the Department of Transportation's recommendation of their standards are for in our subdevelopment streets. And since then, you're not going to see problems in places that we've built since then. And I don't think those are the places that Avery is spending his time working or in our newer subdivisions. I think the places that were built in the 40s and 50s and 60s. It predated any of the DINA requirements, the DOT requirements. So those are the places we're working, really expending our money. It's not in our new stuff. Moving forward, I think we've got a good handle on that. You've got to look at the other, 300 years of New Bern is kind of what we're dealing with.
I think that bond idea sounds pretty good, because
She wants a lot of things. She figures she can just get to this.
they say we get $5 million and only utilize 2 for this project, and we want a fire station, that's another 2 towards
You
that.
you can't do that.
No, but you can vote on them.
Yeah, you can do a bond issue with several different things in it. You can.
People want a fire station, people want infrastructure, and we want redevelopment. Let's go. That's the one and done theory right there.
When we talked about it before, we actually talked about like a quality of life bond, and then an infrastructure bond, and a public safety bond. So you can do it that way.
I said we roll with the bond and let the people vote, and we just get out on the streets and tell the people what they need. And then we don't have to worry about raising the.
So what Alderman Odom was alluding to is we talked and batted around a little bit the possibility of doing a general obligation bond 2 years ago, I guess it was, where you had the quality of life, which we kind of lumped together some recreational components underneath that. Then you had the public safety, which there was some stuff lumped under that with fire stations and some police stuff or whatever. And then there was also the infrastructure, which was stormwater and street resurfacing.
That's the best idea we heard all day.
But even with the bond, you borrowed the money through the bond, you're gonna still have to raise rates, correct?
Well, but the public is voting to agree to self-impose a tax upon themselves. And let's say, so what it would be is there would be a question on there. Do you agree to self-impose a tax of, 3 additional cents for paying for a fire station or whatever? And public safety improvement.
When you say tax, you're not talking about tax, ad valorem tax, you're talking about fees.
No, she's talking about ad valorem tax.
And the problem with that is,
No.
if we all know that we need infrastructure and we're asking for a bond for stormwater infrastructure, and the people say, I don't want to pay extra money, and they vote it down,
Can we just say
then then now we're doing what the public says the citizens are saying they don't want to do, and we're increasing their taxes and doing it anyway.
Okay.
So that, I mean, it's a dangerous situation when you're dealing with bonds.
So you guys keep saying taxes. When I get my light bill, it says stormwater fee, $2.10.
Yeah.
That's a fee to me, not a tax.
Yeah, yes, there's 2 things that keep getting interchanged
Yeah, so
here.
if we do a
So
bond, explain to me.
if we do a geo bond, you're going to have 2 revenue sources that'll essentially pay for that revenue bond, assuming we do both stormwater related transactions or improvements and say a fire station. I'm just using that as an example. Please don't shoot me for that saying that. Now, if we do the fire station, that would end up likely being paid for through ad valorem taxes, which are property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
The stormwater improvements would be paid for via an increase in stormwater fee.
So you could potentially get 2 fees. Your taxes would go up and your stormwater.
It's just dangerous.
Even in one bond thing, I thought.
But could we just, do we all agree that stormwater is the number one emphasis?
Yes.
So
Yes.
instead of us going after a bond, because this, I'm just telling you what you raised the last board, instead of us going after all these other things, just let's do stormwater, let's do it this year, let's do a geo bond, let's do it for $5-6 million, whatever it takes to get this thing fixed, and let's see what happens. Because that'll be a temperature gauge whether or not you want to do another bond the following year to do something
That
else.
sounds good, because
Plus,
when
you
I
don't
look
have,
at
you
these
got a limited
numbers,
time to get it
I
right.
have
Yes.
$16.80, and I think a lot of people have that if we're raising rates. I don't know why we haven't in
Have you got an idea of how much you need?
$2.10.
We've got projects set aside. Give us some time. I don't want to say that here, but give us some time to put that together, and we can report back to the board and let you know where we stand. But I mean, just to give you an idea, that I think, what was that, Mayor? I think a year ago, whenever y'all gave us the $1.5 million, it was a 4 number. So I'm sure they've identified some more if we want to go with 2.5, 3, 4, 5, whatever. I mean,
And you would rather do that, Jeff, and take your chances versus just trying to borrow a set amount of money and paying it back over a 20-year period.
I would.
Because again, I'm just concerned that if people say no, and then we got to turn around and do it anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
I agree with
the
you,
reason
Bob.
I'm saying that is because for 4 years, it's no fault of Avery's at all. But I've gotten the calls, you guys raised my taxes or fees $2.10, and I've never seen anybody clean my ditch out.
I
So
agree.
then if we go back and tell them, hey, we're going to double that fee, but we're going to promise to do some other stuff, it's not going to go over very well from the public standpoint, at least in Ward 6.
But
I know the tax is not gonna go.
But if
really
we-
well.
if we went out and borrowed $5 million and financed it through a 20-year period, how much would we?
$423,000. I literally just.
$423,000 a year.
Yes, sir.
And how much would that raise?
So he's going to have to get rid of
The rates-
3/4 of his staff
Yeah,
That'd be the
to
whole.
pay for it.
based on what we collect now.
And then there goes all your maintenance that's being done.
You're gonna raise the rate though,
And if you
right?
put new stuff in the
Raise
ground,
the
you
rate,
say this,
then
and you don't maintain it, you'll be right back.
Yeah, exactly.
But Jeff's idea was doing that without raising the rate, so that, because,
But you're paying $2.10
so what
right
he's
now,
saying
that's
is
nothing.
that they put the rate on there and people didn't see a change, so to do it and still see no, and possibly to then still see no change, it's gonna backfire. I don't wanna see nobody, but I'm saying, like I said, my idea with the inmates.
old
they're
Sherman
pushing them
Pickard.
over to cutting the grass and bringing
Old
the
Sherman
bill before
Pickard
they
told
go
me one
clean the
time,
ditches out.
he said, if you need it, you better pay for it, don't ask for it a bond, because it makes you look like an idiot if they vote it out and then you go do it the very next year.
It's gonna be enough if we get that.
Let me add one more thing, just I guess for maybe to help the conversation. A lot of these improvements we talk about are invisible improvements. Let me help frame that maybe for you. On Spencer Avenue, right behind us here, we're getting ready to spend in excess of $900,000 of water and sewer fund money to repair aged water and sewer infrastructure. That will be an invisible improvement for the residents of Spencer Avenue. Today, they have water service, they have sewer service, it works fine. Their faucets work, their toilets flush. When we're done with the project, they'll still have water and sewer service. To them, nothing really changed. However, there's critical infrastructure we know that needs to be upgraded and replaced, or they're not going to have that service. With the storm drainage, a lot of it's the same way. A lot of the money that will be spent to fix a lot of the still infrastructure, they become invisible improvements because you don't see an immediate benefit for that. But if you're not replacing them, it can be catastrophic. So I don't want everybody to paint the picture that you're going to spend money and just all the problems go away and everybody's problems get solved. A lot of what's getting done will be improvements that need to be done on critical infrastructure that people don't really realize there's even an issue. And that's not a New Bern problem, that's not a North Carolina problem, that's a national issue. The things that are out of sight and out of mind that aren't getting the attention they are crumbling and failing. And I think you can kind of hear that echo through state news, national news, almost every night.
So I think that would be a good idea then when we're doing these major projects like that. It needs to be aired on TV, on public television, so the residents can see what's going on at the time. And see what's going on, where the money is being spent, and this major project is an impact on the city in itself.
Right, Facebook and everything, every time you're about to go
On
clean a
TV
ditch.
free, I mean.
Live on Facebook so they know, because that's really what it is that, you know, they think that you're not there. Yeah, you know.
As the project progresses along, it's being aired and the public is seeing this. So they know where their money is going.
Well, I understand both sides too, because if we do a bond and they don't want it, and we still got to do it.
That's gonna cause a problem, in my opinion.
I'd be willing to say, well, I don't know. but-
Well, can we do something and have a public hearing? People to come out and do it that way without doing
Well, let
a,
me tell you something. If you start doing a bond, you're gonna have plenty of public input, because you're gonna, every one of us is gonna have to be out there talking this thing
well,
up. or it
all we
won't pass.
hear about is infrastructure issues. So really, I mean, I really think the numbers might be there, but I understand what Mark said, we're gonna have to make some tough decisions. So this is one of them. Do you wanna bond it out so he can know, or do we wanna go to the bank, say Q, whoever, maybe Fed, and ask them, can you give us $5 million to fix the stuff that we gotta fix? So, you know, 2 people ain't cleaning drains. I mean, we gotta leave here today to get the board direction, so, I mean,
I'd like you to look at how much it's gonna cost, what you're talking about, what's the number, is it 2 million, 4 million, 5, what is the number? And then what can you get, and what's it gonna cost? And then based on that, what are we gonna have to do with the stormwater fee? That'll help me, and then I can make my decision based on that.
I think the meeting today has been very timely, and I think it's a great time of year to have it, that we're gonna be going into the budget season real soon. And I'm sure, you know, every year I've been, since the stormwater came on, we've had pretty lengthy discussion during the budget discussion, so I
This
think.
works really good. I just want you to know, I really appreciate y'all giving up your Friday afternoon. To me, I'm fresher, I'm more engaged in the process when I come in at 6 o'clock at night, you know, and it's getting 9 o'clock, you're like, you don't want to talk about it anymore. So thank you, everybody, for giving up your afternoons, but this is much more engaging.
it works better.
I know you have a child.
I would just make a suggestion that, I mentioned it to Mark and Chrissy, that when we get in the budget season, I mean, we've had these meetings that have lasted till, we started the one last year, we started an hour early and we still got out at the same time. I would think we might want to think about a date to do work on budgets.
I agree.
A couple of afternoons or something, because
Yeah.
it's,
Well, let me know.
Yeah, it works for me. Can I ask a question? Did we get a revised date for the redevelopment commission workshop? I'm concerned with that.
I need to send you all an email of the dates that are available from the school of government folks, and I will need y'all to kind of respond back, if you will, yes, I'm available, no, I'm not available. So if all of y'all can do that, we can get that schedule solidified. Most of the dates she gave are in March.
We get direction for which part, which way we're going.
Yeah.
We'll get some figures.
Anything else? Are we through? We want to talk some more about stormwater?
So just so I'm clear, so I got my marching orders of what, so JR and I are going to get together, we're going to crunch some numbers as to what our project lists are, as well as what our lending ability is as far as time, and how much that equates to in a per annum cost, so that if you want to consider something with utility fee, we can do so. Is that the direction I'm getting on the stormwater fee stuff?
One thing I wanted, again, that I was trying to get across, I'm probably not the best communicator, but let's say from Trent Road to Pembroke, that canal back through there, you know, there are probably some overwhelming physical needs to clean some major arteries that have not ever been cleaned.
I agree.
And would you please get some figures and identify some of those problematic stress areas, and see if there is not a company that, where it would take and cost us $50,000 to do it, that a private contractor might go in there for $18,000 to do it, or actually get us some quotes.
I will.
Could you do that?
I've got some areas already in my mind, and
Thank
then
you, sir.
I'll make some more.
Well, if it's a blue line ditch too, there should be grant funds available for that. I know the
The
county.
state offers what they used to offer. I'm not sure if they still do. It's called de-snagging. They used to go
That's
through
right.
and actually clean.
Especially after hurricanes.
Coal Creek and all that, the county did.
Well, they did Swift Creek as well.
We need to look at that. And not necessarily spend more money.
So we'll work on the stormwater utility stuff as promptly as possible. It may be that I don't know how long it'll take you to get together a whole project list in some of these areas that you're talking about.
I got a pretty well put together list already,
Okay.
plus I got some other ideas.
So we'll get together that and we'll report back to the board.
Sounds good, man.
Motion to close.
Move.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say